late on the time, I can't.
Everybody ready?
Maybe I have another, somebody have another one.
Okay, let's go ahead.
For you.
All right,
Yeah, I could benefit from that.
welcome to the January 26th Sewer Authority Midcoastside Board of Directors regular meeting. It is 19:05. Let's have roll call, please.
Director Reddick,
Here.
Director Caltech,
Here.
Chair Harvey,
Here.
Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Warren,
Present.
Director Lohman.
Here.
All right, let's stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd just like to make a comment. I'd like to welcome Debbie Reddick from Half Moon Bay on the board, and we'll welcome to you. And while I'm still here in the board position, I'd like to suggest that we move item number 5D up to first item after consent agenda, if that's okay, so that our guests can leave, unless anyone has any objection to that?
Well, I'm having computer problems. Which one's 5D?
Well, that's the information update on activities related to the Kehoe water course parcel. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll do that.
But how many people do we have here for other agenda items?
Okay, hold on a second, Leonard. So, is there any public comment? Any comments on any items not on the agenda? Any oral communication? All right. Are there any other people here that are giving a presentation later on? Yeah.
We have Kellex Nelson and Brittany Belke, is that, did I get it right? From RCD to do a presentation on the First Plus program. If you recall back when we had the discussion about increasing the funding, one of the desires was for them to come back and do a presentation on what they found with their water sampling and kind of do a recap of the project. So
Okay.
they'll be,
Well, good. Well, that's right up there on top. So
Correct.
we're in good shape. All right. No other oral communication? So in that case, on to item 2A, special order of the day, election of SAM officers. Who wants to go first? Leonard?
The rotation. Let's see. I think I was the chair before you. Wait a minute. No, Rick was the chair before you.
That was a good year.
That was amazing.
A vintage year.
I remember it well.
It's one of those Rick years.
So by our sort of informal convention, it's back around to Granada.
Sure.
That is kind of our, we've done a lot of different things the past few years. It's been on the,
it's worked.
fairly ordinary rotation.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
If that's the case, I'd like to nominate, it'd be Rick for chair.
Okay.
Second.
second. I always support Rick's.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's a Rick thing.
Good
All right.
thing.
So should we'll do the is a
You'll do
motion
it.
and a second? Should we do?
Well, that's a nomination. Do we want to try to do everything all at once?
Or do you want to do it separately? Let's do it all at once. Is that okay? We can do that, can't we, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay, do I have a nomination for a vice chair?
since next in rotation would be Half Moon Bay, and Rick has recently done it, I would nominate Debbie Reddick.
Sure. I would
Second that.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All right, and then how about other officers then? We have, we need to have a secretary treasurer.
I want to suggest something, and we might need to more formally agendize this for a future meeting if the board is interested in this thought. The Sanitary District Act, which is what governs this agency, because it's the only authority that all member agencies have in common, allows the treasurer and I think the secretary to be staff, not board members. And what's interesting is under the CSD law that Granada now operates under for most things, the CSD law actually prohibits directors from being secretary and treasurer. So Since staff basically does all the work of the treasurer anyway, I'm thinking maybe we wanna think about having the treasurer be, more formally be a staff member instead of a board member.
Jim?
Point of order, under the
Yeah.
JPA, it's board members.
Okay.
That's true, it would require a JPA amendment.
The board member may
Let's
not,
just go change the
do
JPA.
all much work, but it's just that position.
Jim, we had these discussions about who can be an officer or not be an officer, what was the combinations, and over the months, I forget what the rule
We
is.
split what was, let me see if I can.
The treasurer wasn't a separate officer by itself, it had to be one of the president, vice, or the chair, vice chair, and secretary, and then we split it and made it a formal, separate officer position.
It's back
We
to secretary,
allow for the
treasurer now.
combination, and there was a condition that we had where it didn't make sense to have one of the officers, I think it was the chair.
I think the chair can't be president.
The chair can't be president.
secretary.
Yeah.
Chair can't be secretary.
Hang on, I've got.
So we're
Okay.
I'm looking, it's on
Let me
page
go
5.
through the archives,
Um,
it was the last amendment, I think.
It's page 5 and 6.
So we have we had a combination.
The
Yeah,
chair may
it's
not
for-
serve in 2 officer positions simultaneously, and it
Yeah.
doesn't say anything about secretary treasurer.
And so,
Four
the
off-
question is, do we want to agendize this for a bigger discussion?
Well, hold on,
I
Jim,
don't want to agendize this for bigger
Jim?
discussion. I think it's fine
Jim.
as it was.
Whatever it was.
If,
What it was, and
It
this
was
was the
working.
Seventh Amendment back in the, we tried to clarify this back in 2010.
okay,
But officers have always been the board members.
Okay.
So that, like Leonard said, if you want to go back and change that, you have to go back to a JP and then, okay.
No.
Well, let's start with 4 officers.
All right, well,
We got a chairman,
let them
we
do
got a secretary, a treasurer. The chairman may not serve in 2 officer positions simultaneously. Any director other than the chairman may serve in 2 positions.
all right.
Okay.
All right, so we can have a separate secretary and treasurer, or we can have one officer combining both. So what's any nominations or comments then?
I would like to nominate Scott Boyd to be dual role of secretary treasurer.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
Second.
What did I ever do to you?
Okay, so,
The authority you deserve.
so what other positions do we need to have?
That's it?
That's
You
it?
got 4?
Okay, so we have a
So
motion
once
and a
again,
second.
I've skated out from being treasurer.
So, well, maybe a reason.
We need to
So,
vote about
Need
that.
a motion?
So we have a motion, let's have a combined motion for all that then.
I move we elect all the nominated officers that we just went through. So that would be Rick Loman for chair, Debbie Reddick for vice chair, and Scott Boyd for secretary treasurer.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
No, it's Rick excuse me,
Go
Rick Kowalczyk is vice chair, not Deborah Reddick?
No,
No.
Deborah Rutherford.
It's Deborah.
Deborah Rutherford is nominated.
Her first meeting, she gets to be vice chair.
That'll teach you.
So
Yes,
if this goes through, do I get two votes in all the?
You do, but we get the electoral votes.
Oh.
All right, so any further discussion? Let's go ahead and have a roll call vote. All right.
Director Reddick,
Aye.
Director Kowalczyk,
Yes.
Chair, Director
Aye.
Harvey,
Aye.
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Warren,
Aye.
Yes.
Director Loman.
All right, so it passes unanimously. I'll go ahead, we'll stay in the present seats, I'll just walk over and present.
Wait, hold on,
Gavel.
take some.
Super slow-mo, Rick.
I got it, slow-mo, wait, I'm gonna get ready.
I've never seen Jim smile quite this much.
Use it, freely.
Okay, first of all, I mean, I'd like to thank Jim. I think he had a wonderful year, and I think everybody appreciated all the great leadership he gave us. He set time records that I don't think I have any hope of ever trying to beat. I just have a couple thoughts off the top of my head. I think relations have improved drastically over the last couple of years, especially last year under Jim. I'd like to see that continue. I'd like to see everybody be totally professional with each other and treat everybody like colleagues and not enemies like in the distant past. So I'd like to have a lot of civility at these meetings. I like meetings to move along. Although SAM is an extremely important thing, I know the board members, staff, consultants in the audience here and the ones who watch on TV all have other things to do in their lives also. So I'd like to move things along expeditiously as we can and have efficient meetings and move on and wrap things up as we can. So that's sort of my philosophies, and I'm looking forward to everybody working together again this year. Lots of good stuff on the horizons with recycled water coming up. Looks like it's moving, and hoping it'll be a good year. One little thing as far as logistics here, I made the horrible technical mistake of listening to somebody and upgrading my laptop from Windows 8 to Windows 8.1. Sorry.
No, the bigger mistake was Windows 8.
The first thing it did was shut down all internet. I found, here's some solutions, and I found out those don't work for Samsungs. I called Samsung and was moderately nasty, and they basically said, sorry, but we realize there is no solution. So I downloaded documents, and I'll be scrolling through them as we go, but if I have to scroll for a little while to find something, please be tolerant. I didn't want to print out 138 pages or whatever it was, but this will be fine. Does anybody need that? Or?
No.
But Rick, you can, in most PDF viewers, you should be able to get bookmarks on the left side so you can click to directly a specific agenda.
So I've got the agenda. We'll go through this, and we'll try 3 or 4 different options simultaneously to move through this thing quickly. So, but if I have to pause for a moment and find something, please be tolerant. Item 2B on the agenda. Did Alan not make it tonight? Or? Alan served here for years and helped us form the Recycled Water Committee, which moved forward and has moved principles forward and several other things, and I think was instrumental in helping us all work together and make some real progress on that. So I'm sorry he's not here and had to leave, but I know Debbie will fill his position well, but I'd just like to thank him for his service here too tonight also. If anybody else has any comments or... Do you have a chance to read that for us? Or?
I can, sure,
Yes, thank you.
I'd be more than happy to. All right. This is Sewer Authority Midcoastside Resolution number 1-2015. A resolution of acknowledgement to Alan Alifano from the Sewer Authority Midcoastside Board of Directors. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside San Mateo County as follows. Whereas Alan Alifano was first appointed to the SAM Board of Directors in January of 2012, and whereas during his time as both Vice Chairman and Board Member, he served both the city that appointed him and his coastside community by taking an active part in the decisions that have culminated in the completion of various projects of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside's Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility and Sewer Collection Maintenance Program, and whereas Alan Alifano also served on the Ad Hoc Recycled Water Committee as chairman and played a key role in restarting productive dialogue regarding potential cooperative recycled water projects on the coast side, and whereas Alan Alifano has displayed through the performance of his duties the highest standards of personal ethics, professional competency, and dedication, and whereas Alan Alifano shall no longer serve on the board as of January 1st, 2015, after serving the Sewer Authority Midcoastside and its customers for 2 years. Now therefore let it be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside formally extends all due respect, admiration, and appreciation on behalf of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside, the Joint Powers Authority member agencies, and the customers therein to Alan Alifano for his years of dedicated service. I hereby certify that the foregoing is a full, true, and correct copy of the resolution duly passed and adopted by the Board of Directors of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside, San Mateo County, California, for regular board meeting They're held on the 26th day of January 25th.
How many years of service did that say?
2.
But you said he was appointed to the board in January of 2012? That's 3 years.
That would, I'm passive, so that's kind of sounds right, but
I thought it feels 3, but
Is it 3?
But if it's-
I know for Alan it felt longer. So,
It was three,
but the sentiment is heartfelt, and I think,
But it is 3 years.
I think it is 3. But I know Alan enjoyed working with Sam, particularly helping to kind of restart recycled water. So he's mentioned he's looking forward to seeing that move forward with similar enthusiasm. So hopefully we'll do that.
Okay, this is actually an official resolution, so we will need a motion and a second on this.
so can we fact check that and then
Mhm.
do this?
It can be part of the motion, I think.
Yeah, put it in motion.
Okay,
I move approval of the resolution commending Ellen Alfano. Now, this says 5 years of service in the agenda. So I move approval of the resolution commending Ellen Alfano for 3 years of service as a SAM board director.
Yeah, I second that motion.
Any other comments?
But I appreciate Alan. He was a square shooter and a good guy. He's fun to work with. He was he worked well with all of us, and we had a good time with him. It was very enjoyable having him on the board. I'm sorry to see him go.
Oh, we're happy to have Debbie here.
Yes.
I'll comment on your resolution. Why don't you just, like Scott suggested, check the facts, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, but adopt the resolution subject to the correct
Okay.
period of time.
Okay.
Now, I seem to recall past resolutions were passed around for all the directors to sign.
Yeah,
Has it been a tradition?
yeah, yeah, that way you get it, you know, a lot more data, you gotta put your name to it.
So if you could correct that, then at the next meeting, we can
Yeah,
all second.
absolutely. We can get
That'd
that
be kinda
done. No, it's, I left the board once before and I got one, and, you know, seeing the signatures on there, sure, it's really nice.
It's a nice touch.
Okay,
Glutton for
You
punishment.
need to vote.
there's no more comment, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's any opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Okay, then we have, as Rob mentioned earlier, number 2C, our special order of the day. We have a presentation by the San Mateo County Resource Conservation District, the staff, regarding the results of the first flush water quality sampling program that Sam participated in also.
Where would you like us to be?
Probably right here will work. But I don't have a remote for this, so we'll have to scroll through.
Okay, I'll scroll for you. Well, you know, we're not gonna start the presentation for a moment to give you the results. First, I'm gonna tell you a little
Sure.
about who we are. First of all, thank you for having us. My name is Kellex Nelson. I'm the executive director of what many people know as the RCD, or the San Mateo County Resource Conservation District. We are a special district that serves San Mateo County. We were established in the state's Public Resources Code to provide technical assistance for landowners and resource managers to best manage their natural resources. Among our programs, we do a lot of work that's habitat restoration or climate mitigation, water conservation, etc. And one of our program areas is in water quality. Brittany Volke is our water quality coordinator. And we have been partnering with a number of entities, sometimes sewer regarding Midcoastside, and certainly a number of others. Brittany will tell you about that, on this program since 2008. So Brittany will tell you a little bit more about that, and I just wanted to acknowledge also before she does that we want to thank Leonard for having been a volunteer this year, and Rob, who trained to be a volunteer with us this year, and also Tony Pullen on Sam's staff was a stalwart volunteer for a number of years, wasn't able to do it this year. So just wanted to acknowledge that, and then I hope to see all of you volunteering next year. And then Brittany can tell you a little bit about the program and our results from this year.
Do you also want to mention First Blush?
She's about to do that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I need some.
Oh, snapshot day. Yeah, so we also do snapshot day, which is what Leonard just mentioned, on May 1st, I think it is, of every year.
First Saturday.
First Saturday of May, and that is looking at kind of the first snapshot in the spring. It's just kind of picking one day out of the year to look at water quality in different locations. So we're going to be trying to do that this year too. But I will talk about the first flush results from 2014 as well as from previous years. So.
If I can change this, Rob, it's not, I think I'm pushing where you told me to click. Click here. Let's see what
There
happens.
you
Okay, so what is first flush? First flush is the first big rainstorm that you get every season or every winter. And basically contaminants are sort of concentrated on land and in the watershed because we've been, in dry seasons or dry times. So once the first big rain hits, then all of the pollutants and contaminants sort of wash out the landscape and enter the stormwater system and running through the storm drains and eventually to the ocean. And this year, first flush was on Halloween in the morning, and we got about 0.14 inches of rain. So the whole program is actually run through National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation, and multiple organizations participate throughout the entire span of the sanctuary. So Coastal Watershed Council runs the program down in Santa Cruz, and then the sanctuary runs it in Monterey, and then the RCD takes care of the samples in San Mateo County. And our partners include Surfrider, as they actually have donated their space, which I know you guys are involved with that as well, their lab to us to train volunteers and to as a sort of a meeting place. San Mateo County Health System processes all of our bacteria samples for free on first flush. And then, of course, you guys helping fund the sites as well as San Mateo County Harbor District. So this shows all of our sites in 2014. On the northern end, that is up by Valimar Avenue, up in Montera. And then you see we have 4 sites that are north of the harbor. And one of the southernmost point is the mouth of San Vicente Creek. And then all of the sites in the harbor, all the stormwater outfalls that exist, and then 2 sites just south of the harbor. And this year we sampled a total of 14 sites. There was 4 that weren't flowing because we didn't get a big enough storm this year. And then 9 of those sites we've actually sampled in the past, but the rest are new, and those are all within the harbor. So what? Yeah.
So it's basically the harbor north is what gets monitored?
So in the past, we did 4 sites north of the harbor, so those 4, and then we've done 2 south of the harbor and 3 within the harbor. So this year was the same as all the other years, except for we added all of the harbor stormwater outfalls.
But yes, basically, in terms of the region, it's essentially from the harbor north. There's 2 points that are just outside of the breakwater, but we don't currently sample further south than Half Bay.
Not Oceanos, not.
That is
Yeah.
correct. That's something that we're gonna be talking about, and something that we would like to include in the program in the future towards the end
Yeah, I
of
thought
the
you talked about that last time, but anyway, thank you.
Yeah, it's just Montera to Surfers Beach.
But Surfers Beach is in the city of Half Bay.
I know it is.
Yeah, but we are very interested in doing more of that and hope to talk with you about that at the end of this presentation.
So we're basically looking at all of the major water quality parameters, and all of these, either have a threat to human health, recreation, or wildlife, the marine environment. So we're looking at different types of fecal indicator bacteria. as well as nutrients, metals, and total suspended solids, which is like particulate matter, and the hardness of the water. And there's multiple sources for all those things. Bacteria is typically from, it could be a leaky sewer pipe or something like that, or wildlife, or we've also found from other studies, it could be from improper disposal, from like pet waste and stuff like that. Nutrients from fertilizers and detergents and soaps. Metals come from brake pads, can come from housing, like the material for downspouts and things like that. So, in addition to just taking the grab samples for those parameters, we also look at physical conditions of the environment that day. So we want to look at transparency and how turbid the water is, as well as pH, conductivity, water temperature, and then any other observations that the volunteers see that could have an impact on the results. So a big part of this program is doing an outreach campaign to recruit volunteers to do the sampling, because there's a lot of sites and there's a lot to capture in a short amount of time while the storm is at its peak. So that involves basically, putting out flyers and basically trying to find volunteers, and then we do a training day with the volunteers, teach them how to take the water samples, go through protocols, and sometimes hopefully take them out to the sites and even do a practice sample. And then once the event is called, the volunteers are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So once we decide to make the call, they have to get there right away and get out and sample. So these are our volunteers from this year. We had 13 volunteers, which was perfect. We got all of our samples done, so. Alright, so I'm going to talk about all of our results, and I'm going to do that by comparing the data to water quality objectives that are set by the EPA or the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So basically it tells you if your result exceeds this limit, then there's a problem. And I'm going to look at our dry run data, which is the samples that we take at one site before first flush hits, to basically compare the dry weather to the wet weather runoff. And then I'm going to do a comparison just in 2014 of all the sites compared to each other. And then we'll look at the historic data over time and also compare it to Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. And one thing to keep in mind is that we have a gap in data from last year because we were not able to secure funding for that year. And then the other counties have data since 2000, so when we're comparing across locations, it's important to note that our data starts in 2008, so it's a little bit different.
Haven't we been doing it longer than that? So what happened to the historic data?
We have been running it, as far as I know, since 2008.
It used to be other organizations, and they must have the data somewhere.
Probably. So this is the dry run versus the first flush data. We did the dry run this year at San Vicente Creek at the mouth. And you can see the difference in the data here. A lot of the first flush data has much higher numbers, and that's what you would expect. And actually none of the dry run data exceeded water quality objectives except for the bacteria data. And E. coli had the highest concentration out of all the samples in all the counties for the dry run this year. So that was really interesting because you're expecting these really high concentrations during the first flush and not during the dry run, but even during the dry run they're still really, really high. So for just 2014, these are all the sites that we sampled, and you can see they're all completely over the water quality objective, which is shown by the red line. And actually the ones that are at the very top, that's our detection limit for the tests in the lab. So those sites actually probably are much, much higher, but the test that we ran this year can't detect over 25,000, so.
I'm just gonna point out, Brittany, I'm sorry to interrupt you, so it's faint here, that there's a yellow line across the top. So keep in mind that where you see that yellow line, that's the limit of what we're able to detect. It's possible that it's hundreds of thousands is the amount, as opposed to 25,000. It's also possible that the amount is 25,000.
So this is looking at E. coli compared to our historic data, and you can see that in every year, at every site, we've exceeded the water quality objective. So this is compared to Monterey and Santa Cruz counties, and basically what this type of graph is showing is the gray is the range of data that exists. Then you have the error bars on top of that, and the black dot is the median of all the numbers. And I put a little yellow line in there to show that we're everything, because I know there's a lot of sites, it's hard to see, but we're everything on the left side of that yellow line. That's San Mateo County. Then it goes to Santa Cruz County and then Monterey County. And this is for E. coli. So you can see that a lot of the counties exceed the water quality objective as well, as the first line is 50,000. The water quality objective is 235. And it sort of looks in this graph that we might have lower concentrations than they do overall, but their detection limits at their lab are higher, so they can detect up to hundreds of thousands. So that's probably why it's showing that. So in future years, we are going to make sure that we have the same detection limits as them, so that we can make that direct comparison.
So do you really believe that we don't have the ability to detect above 50,000?
No, we do have the ability. It was just that we process samples at a different lab, and they just choose a default of how they're going to run the sample. And so in some years, like in our past, in 2008 and 2009, we had a detection limit above that, and then the past couple of years, for whatever reason, it wasn't specified. So that's something that we need to make sure happens in the future, or seeing if Monterey and Santa Cruz, we just need to come to a common detection limit. It's probably better to go higher, so that's probably. So this is another form of bacteria, Enterococcus. Again, same exact thing. All the sites are way over the red line and the water quality objective, and then the ones that are at 25,000 could potentially be much higher.
The source of Enterococcus is typically what?
What was that?
The source of Enterococcus is typically what?
So it's any warm-blooded mammal. So animals, humans, it's fecal bacteria.
Several of those creeks have no significant human population anywhere near them, like the northernmost. So are you thinking, do we have any?
I mean, we don't, this type of analysis doesn't get into what the potential sources could be. It only indicates present, or it enumerates the bacteria. In order to do that, you'd have to do a much more.
Well, I understand, I was just wondering if
study,
there was.
But it can be deer.
Yeah.
I know, I'm asking them, do you have
American
theories?
So this, of course, was the reason that we did the Pillar Point Harbor study, right? Which is
Right.
that over all those years, we had a fair amount of enumeration data that told us there's a problem, but we couldn't tell what the source was of the problem. One of the things that we're interested in, that we sort of discussed whether or not to talk with you guys about tonight, is the possibility of finding partners to fund a microbial source tracking study for some of these other locations, because we're certainly interested in understanding where that's coming from. When you look at these data where you see the consistent and chronic problems, is with bacteria.
Could we go back to the previous slide real quick?
The county did, with a Proposition 84 grant, the county did microbial source tracking at some locations in the mid-coast area that are informative. I don't know if you've all seen that, the results of that. If not, we can get it for you, or introduce you to the folks that kind of have those results. And then the study that we did in the harbor is informative. We have not done the analysis to overlay all of those results with these results and see what.
I just realized these aren't in any kind of geographic order, right?
No.
Okay. 'Cause at first I thought that was north to south like the other one, and it's like the high reads are almost entirely in harbor. So like Windy Waves, Moss Beach, where I would expect
Mhm.
almost nothing, and that's the lowest one, so that actually fits with expectations.
What's surprising to me is the significant difference between Denniston and Deer Creek. Deer Creek, we pretty much know why that's so high, because there's a lot of deer there.
It's
No,
also
that's not what we
West Point,
found.
Surfers, Capistrano, they're.
No,
they're
in the harbor study, Deer Creek was one of the few inputs where we had pretty conclusive results, and that was cattle.
Okay, what I remember you saying was bovine, and I thought that meant a bunch of different things.
Could mean a bunch of different things, but there's a cattle operation.
And so I don't understand why Denniston is not suffering from the same problem as Deer
All right,
Creek.
well,
These ones, huh?
I just wanted to make sure I understood the data
Right.
that you were showing. Okay.
So this is very similar to E. coli. Again, every site and every year is much higher than the water quality objective.
What is each symbol there represent?
Those are the different sites, and a lot of them are stacked on top of each other, so most of them are up at the 25,000 mark. But basically just, trying to show the trend over time and seeing over how many years we exceeded the water quality objectives.
So where you see 3 diamonds in a particular year, there's actually 9, and they may be stacked on top of each other.
So looking at Enterococcus compared to the other counties, it's a very similar trend to E. coli. Again, we're left with the yellow line, so it's looking like they also are having bacteria problems over the water quality objective, and that they could potentially be higher than ours, but again, we need to reconcile that detection limit.
Oops, sorry.
So now moving on to the metals, copper. In 2014, we had 4 of the sites over the water quality objective, and all of those sites were in the harbor. And West Point is the highest of all of those. And then looking
Kind of
at,
suggest a point source, doesn't
I beg your pardon?
it? Kind of suggest a point source, doesn't
It suggests what?
it? A point source. It's so far out of profile with everything else, and it's an industrial section, and there's some industrial operations right there. I'm wondering if that's not something we might want to take a look at with our point source program.
and then looking at copper over time, at those 9 sites that we've been sampling, 50% of the sites have been over the water quality objective. But it does look, if you look at among years, that maybe we have fewer in 2014 than other years that have exceeded the objective. But keep in mind that the second and third graphs don't include the new harbor sites, just all of the sites that we consistently had data for.
I think copper is interesting because San Mateo County also has this rain barrel program where you can get rain barrels. One of the instructions is you're supposed to use some kind of a chain or a downspout, but they forbid you to use copper chains. And probably on downspouts, probably, I don't know what the percent on the coast side is, but an awful lot of people use copper because everything else deteriorates. So it's like, I don't know if that's one of the contributors with everybody using, copper gutters and things like that, but
Yeah.
it's compared to other regions or something like that, like the interior. Anyway,
Definitely could be.
Yeah, architectural features and brake pads in many areas. There's no brake pads, but brakes.
And then looking at copper compared to the other locations, it looks like we're pretty similar. They have, some higher ranges and values, but again, that could be a function of them having more years of data. But if you look at the medians, ours are pretty high up there next to theirs. So
And there's no detect limit on that one?
we have the same detection limit on that. All of the rest of them have the same detection limit. And then, looking at zinc, it's actually the exact same as copper. The exact same 4 sites are over the water quality objective, and West Point is up there with the highest concentration. But overall, zinc looks to be a little bit less of a problem than copper. Only 20% of the sites starting in from 2008 to 2014 exceeded the objective.
What are some sources for zinc?
Same sort of thing, like just industrial environments, like I think some parts of automotive. Do you know, Kelly, was any more specifics?
No, I don't. But we could probably look into it and send you an email that you could share with the group. Actually, any questions that you have are also helpful for us because we're making this same presentation to the Harbor District and at the RCD Board of Directors, so it's great to know what kinds of questions come up so we can try to look that up and before there's other questions in public forums.
So looking at zinc over time, it does look like maybe we have lower concentrations than the other regions, and we're doing a little bit better there. And lead, we didn't see any exceedances this year of water quality objectives. One of the harbor sites, one of the new harbor sites was really close, but it didn't exceed. And then looking at those 9 sites over time, the water quality objective is actually at 30 at the very top. So we haven't had any exceedances over time for lead at those 9 sites. We just had one at the new site. And again, you can see that our concentrations are a little bit lower than other counties, but the threshold is at 30, so they're not really exceeding that objective either. And then moving on to nutrients, orthophosphate. This year we had all but 1 site exceed the water quality objective. The worst was San Vicente Creek, followed by Deer Creek. And you can see those are quite a bit higher than the other sites. And then looking at orthophosphate over time, 70% or 69% are over the water quality objective, and it looks like it kind of looks like it's progressively getting worse over time. Looking at 2012 and then 2014, and then those 2 outliers up there. So in 2014, I think that was San Vicente, not San Vicente Creek.
Where does orthophosphate come from? I hear phosphate, I think detergent.
It's the same. Yeah, it's just a form that's mainly used in fertilizers and then detergents and soaps.
There's some fields that were put into active farming during that period.
Well, one of the things that you'll see that's interesting is that orthophosphates are high where nitrates are not. And nitrates I would associate with agriculture, which makes me wonder if this is more residential. It's not conclusive, but that was certainly interesting for us.
And then looking at orthophosphate compared to the other counties, our ranges are high because we had a couple of outliers, but overall our medians look a lot lower. So I think that we have slightly lower, there's a little bit of a trend that maybe we have lower concentrations than other counties. And then nitrate, we didn't come close to exceeding the water quality objective for any of the sites this year. And then same thing, since 2009, it looks like for nitrate, we didn't exceed the water quality objective. And then, of course, compared to the other counties, there's a lot of ag happening. They have much bigger nitrate issues than we do here, so. But one thing that was interesting was this year, out of all the samples, at Vassar Avenue, we had the highest concentration for nitrate. out of any of the sites that were sampled. But it still didn't exceed the objective, so it's not that bad, it's just sort of interesting. So maybe, you know, they're improving things in Monterey or Santa Cruz because their data historically, isn't the greatest, but this year they didn't exceed the water quality objective for any of their sites. And we had the highest, so.
We also, a few years ago, we did a different analysis where we did another citizen science initiative to try to get some baseline data on some mid-coast creeks. And we had volunteers go out once a month for a year and collect data. And we collected data on a creek that was coming off a local farm. The only contributor to that creek really could have been this farm and upland habitat. And our results showed the nitrate levels to be lower than detectable limits, but our baseline that we compared it to was a bottle of purchased water, the brand shall remain nameless, and that was 4 times the recommended environmental limit of nitrates. I was so sure that it was mistaken, I asked staff to go out and repeat it, and we had the same finding. So we actually have some history of not finding a lot of nitrates coming off of the farms and the creeks in this particular area. So I'm not entirely surprised that that our nitrate findings appear to be consistent with the orthophosphate findings.
This is prepackaged bottled water?
Mm-hmm.
That's dangerous for pregnant women.
I was pregnant at the time, and so I was particularly aware of that.
Is the rooster that been notified?
Well, there aren't. It was environmental limits. It wasn't. It didn't exceed drinking water standards. But it was just interesting, the comparison of, you know,
Mhm.
bottled, store-bought drinking water versus water that's coming off of a local farm. And we did it twice in that particular monitoring.
But one of the bottom lines here is just don't buy that bottled water in squishy plastic bottles.
Okay.
So looking at total suspended solids, the water quality objective is at 500 milligrams per liter, and we didn't come close really on any of the sites to that objective. And same thing over time, we've only had one exceedance back in 2012, and then you can see down in 2014, it looks like probably the lowest year out of any of the years too. And then looking at the different counties, kind of all over the place, but the water quality objective is at 500, so you can see that there's hardly anything that's getting up to that point, so it doesn't seem to be much of an issue for any of the counties. So this is just tried to be a concise summary of everything. Bacteria, we saw 100% exceedance all the time, every site, every year. It appeared to be similar to Monterey and Santa Cruz counties, but we don't know that for sure because they have higher detection limits. So that's something that needs to be fixed in the future. And then metals, for copper, we saw the highest amount of exceedances of the objective. So 50% of our samples since 2008 have exceeded the objective. For zinc, 20% of the samples, and for lead, none have exceeded. And almost all of these have been in the harbor, and actually at the same 4 sites: West Point, Deer Creek, Vassar, and then a site that I called Harbor Upland, just a little outfall just south of the parking lot. And overall though, for metals, it looks like we have slightly lower concentrations than the other 2 counties. And then for nutrients, we haven't had any exceedances for nitrate at all, and we're at 69% for orthophosphate. But just in this year alone for orthophosphate, we saw a 90% exceedance rate. And yeah, so that seems to be similar to the other counties, but our nitrate is definitely lower. So next steps, this data hopefully will be able to help inform management decisions and target various practices like cleaning out storm drains or putting in CDS units or maybe doing
What was that, what units?
CDS units. They're like, they clear out like litter and debris. They're, I don't know, you buy them, they're just like a little contraption that you put in the storm drain system.
Debris traps.
Yeah. And then other stormwater best management practices like vegetated swales and permeable surfaces. And then of course, education and outreach to the community. So we hope to continue this program. We have 6 years of data, but the other counties have 15 years of data. And then we also have some new sites that we got this year, so we'd like to be able to continue sampling those sites so we can compare them over time. You guys saw how useful it was to be able to make those time comparisons. And then also just expand the geographic range, because if you look at it, it's really pretty small and doesn't necessarily represent the entire county. So yeah, we would like to look for additional funding for multiple years at a time so that we don't have to redo the administration every year. And so we are going to work on a scope of work and budget for that.
What are your current sources of funding?
You guys and the San Mateo County Harbor District. And then we have Surfrider and San Mateo County Environmental Health that donate like lab space or resources.
So to the board, I'm certain that we discussed this before to include areas south of the harbor, in Half Moon Bay and even further south. And I almost certainly even set budget aside for it in previous years.
I know we discussed it, I absolutely do not remember having a discussion on that.
I remember that it was discussed as well, but to my knowledge, I
We had
think
a
it
change
came
in,
of it.
well, we had a change in leadership, and we definitely directed him to put budget aside for it, but I think when this comes back, when you have your statement of work, like to see it, and like, I think it's not responsible of this board to fund this if we don't fund all of our districts.
Well, I definitely think that you have to include Pillarcitos, because that's gonna be a really significant indicator for Half Moon Bay. And, you know, I think including, I don't know what other sites are appropriate, probably Frenchman's Creek at least. But other sites in Half Moon Bay, I think, would provide good comparisons for the unincorporated mid-coast. You know, if you see the same patterns there, then you look in one direction for the sources, but if you see a totally different pattern, then you think about different possible sources.
We'd like to include some more sites in Half Moon Bay, and then outside of your jurisdiction, we want to go down on the south coast where there's really different land uses and maybe different constituents in the water, and do more in Pacifica.
So I know Don Horsley would love to talk to you about the south coast, but regarding Half Moon Bay, I'd like to know what possible monitoring sites there are. So when you come back with that, I think we should make a decision about which ones to cover.
Yeah, we'll recommend some to you and cost those out. And then I'd also be interested in getting sort of a gut check about the idea of when we do cost it out and put together a budget, that we do something for multiple years. Every year we spend a good chunk of our time scrambling to get the program funded instead of just moving forward with the program, and that's why we missed last year and almost didn't have it this year. So it's our inclination to go to the Harbor District and to you, and if we expand to areas outside of your jurisdiction, to them also, and try to get multiple year agreements. Is that something that we should be costing out for you?
I think you can give us an option, but we plan on one year option and then others. But what did this program cost this year?
What was the total cost this year? 16,000? Of course, that doesn't capture all of what we spent. But for the funders, it cost 16,000. I think the true cost was probably more like 18,000, maybe 19,000. But there were some things this year that were one-time expenses. Well, maybe not one-time expenses, but not annual expenses. So we expect it to be less expensive next year, average per site, but more expensive overall if we include more sites.
Yeah, we had the same conversation, so I look forward to seeing it come back.
Didn't you have a lot of one-time equipment and.
Yeah,
So that's what I say, well, not quite one time, but some of it, you know, might need to be replaced eventually,
right.
but it wouldn't be an expense next year.
Will your proposal include microbial source tracking this time?
No, not for the first flush storm event. The microbial source tracking would be a different effort, one that I'd be very interested in talking with you all about. But for example, the study that we did of the harbor was $1 million. I think that you want to be very, very focused about where you want to do your microbial source tracking before you spend a whole lot of money. The expense is usually the big limiting factor for that, so you want to be very targeted. So I don't think that we're prepared to develop that scope of work for this next year.
I'll try and track down for you who's got the results of the Capistrano Beach E. coli DNA testing that was done in 2001.
We have that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. We got that as part of the literature review for the harbor study. And we've been talking with some folks at the Harbor District about, you know, what might be next steps regarding the microbial source tracking work, and we'll be talking to them about what we're seeing coming out of this as well.
Great. Thank you two very much for coming out. Well, any input you can give us in the future, you know, about funding requirements and new locations and what that would cost would be great.
Right.
Because that's one of our key items here for Sam. So just doing that. So.
Yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is that I won't support it unless something's happening, because it's just not responsible of us. So please bring that forward. And looking
We'd like
forward
to.
seeing that.
Believe me, we'd like to.
Great, thank you.
And
Yeah,
it needs to be the whole,
Yeah.
I mean, for studies like that, I mean, we preaching to the choir, right, but studies like this should cover the whole range.
I know what this says about my reputation of beach quality, but that's right.
Rick, the most avid beach lover of all Half Moon Bay Sand representatives.
Rick, notice there's nobody speaking against, including
Yeah. Well, actually, so the other thing is that I think part of that may be that we had a really difficult time getting a toehold, getting somebody to talk to at the city of Half Moon Bay to get funding. So Granada Sanitary District has been a pretty consistent funder for the project, and over the last couple of years when we contacted the city, we didn't get much bite. But now that we're doing it through.
So nobody contacted me, and at this board, we specifically discussed this item. We specifically set budget aside with a previous general manager, and that funding should come through Sam. And if you come through Sam, you'll get heard. If you go to the city manager, I'm sure you'll get heard. If you go to the city council, I'm sure you'll get heard. I don't think you were ignored. And I'm sorry if you had that impression.
So what we did find for sure is that this approach has worked very well with coming through Sewer Authority Midcoastside for a couple of reasons. One is that it avoids any redundancy in the Granada district, so they're not paying twice. And the other is that these primary stakeholders are all at the table, and then we definitely know that we have your attention, and you know that you have our attention. I think we all want the same thing. We want to monitor those Half Moon Bay sites.
And then my last comment will be, Harbor District could certainly cover the harbor, and I think we can cover the other parts of the coast.
Great.
I think it's a good distribution.
And, the Harbor District, I think it might be easier for you to get funding from them now, since one of the new commissioners is a marine biologist with serious interest in water quality issues.
Yeah, yeah, we've been talking with her a lot about that. So, yeah, it's been a great resource.
Great, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're done.
Okay, moving on to the regular agenda again. We're on item 3, the consent agenda. This is a little bigger than normal because we got a couple catch-up things like minutes and monthly reports and things like that. So of the items, are there any items that somebody wants to pull and talk about?
I would like to, with board agreement, come in can spend some time with, general manager and some technical staff and understand why there's so many big ticket items on the warrant report. There's a lot of things there that, to me, feel more money than I'd expect them to be, and you know, I don't wanna spend half an hour right now going through it. So what I'd like to do is just arrange some time that works between me and the staff, and then, you know, I might have something to report to the board or not, depending on what I hear.
Does anybody have any objections to Leonard going one-on-one with the staff? Okay.
Directors, if I could point something out about item E, we have the schedule of board meetings, and one of our board meetings falls on Memorial Day. And for staff purposes, maybe we'd consider moving that to Tuesday. I'm not sure how that works with everyone's schedule, but the following day after, that would be the day after Memorial Day. And the only reason I'm requesting that instead of, say, moving out to the previous Monday is because what that creates is time compression for the staff to generate all the materials. So if we could do it the following, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, I believe that's the 27th? 26th.
Well, we always used to do that. In fact, the JPA agreement actually specifies that, but I think we ran into a lot of problems with going to the next business day, and that's why we always try to do it on the previous or following Monday. It doesn't have to be previous, it can be following.
Next day works, we have a city council meeting on the previous Tuesday,
Right.
so if we just move it up one day, that works for us.
To Tuesday,
Move it out
the
one day,
26th.
right?
To Tuesday.
To Tuesday, the 27th.
Right.
We could-
It was always city council Tuesdays that was
Oh, I
the
see.
difficulty, but if on this one we're getting the odd week,
27th
then we're
is
all.
right.
The 27th.
26th.
Okay, I need to look at the
26.
calendar with that in mind.
Also fine.
It's,
Mhm.
The next day,
While Leonard's checking that, does anybody have any
Yeah,
other items
Tuesday
to
the
Trying to
pull?
find the link to click on to get the calendar.
So are we discussing items, pulling items, what's,
Yeah, are there any items to
Fielder's
pull?
choice?
Yes.
I want to discuss 3BA and 3C.
So what did we decide on the May meeting?
We're waiting for you to approve it so we can move forward.
Scrolling down to the calendar.
so you haven't changed.
So we probably have
So
to
you're looking
pull
at
that
the
to change that.
Fuller report and the ADES report, are those the ones you're looking at? Or no, you're looking at the big three,
3BA.
3BA and 3BC.
Oh,
No, 3BA and 3C.
Ah, gotcha.
So, staff is suggesting May 26th. I'm not sure I understand the coloring here because you have the 18th colored. So what is staff's recommendation?
The following day, which would be the 26th of May.
Okay. There's actually a California law that says government agencies cannot conduct business on state or national holidays.
Okay, is everybody happy with the 26th?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay, great. Let's lock that in. So we're gonna pull items 3BA and 3C at this point. I'll take a motion to approve all the rest of them.
So moved?
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay, 3BA, the monthly flow reports.
Okay, so the averages have been inching up in 53% in November, which is getting on the border of atypical. I wanna understand when the last time the flow monitors were checked and calibrated.
Well, I'll have to ask about that. It was recently, but recently being within the last several months. I'll have to get back to you with an exact date on that.
Okay, so, a date, I would appreciate knowing the date, but I also, I guess I'm asking that, we look into it just to verify that they're correctly reporting, because those numbers are skewing,
Rick, you did notice that December you're at 50.1%.
still over 50%.
November's, oh, give me a break.
Come on,
0.1.
So anyway,
We'll schedule another
Thank
one.
you.
Okay,
Yeah, just if you have them checked, I appreciate it, thank you.
is that
That's it.
the whole item? Okay, going on to 3C, the disbursements for December.
Yeah, and just the one item on for the rebuild and repair the pump in Portola for $33,000. And it just, I have a rhetorical question, at what point does a rebuild become a new pump? And
That's a good question.
And I know it's a JPA question that we have to get into, but it sure is a lot of money, and I'm just making the comment, and again, my comment is that this, in my estimation, is a new pump, a new capital item, and I want to support the whole system that Sam manages, but this is an item that looks like to be a new item, a new capital item, and I think should be handled as such.
But that still doesn't change the way it's funded.
I believe it should, and I just want to say that.
So, I mean, one thing that we could do in that case, if replacement is always new stuff and gonna be funded differently, then we should spend a lot more money on maintenance. I mean, you see where that goes, right?
Well, it's a tricky slippery slope, right? It points to a bigger discussion we need to have at some point, which is, you know, they keep, doing all this capital repairs. How do we handle it appropriately and fairly in the JPA? And right now, the way it is, we follow the letter of the JPA, but and again, in my opinion, it's not balanced across the agencies.
Well, as things wear out, if we go that route, then what you would wind up with in the long run, as things wore out, would be the other members of SAM would wind up picking up potentially all the cost as you guys kind of opt out through retirement of worn out stuff. I mean, when you go back and read the JPA from the start, the infrastructure was put in place, and then SAM as a whole accepted ownership of that. So keeping it up and running is a SAM whole responsibility, and who pays which portion of it has to do with ownership, not geographic location or proximity to any part of the collection system, because all three agencies had treatment facilities. Any one of us could have modified our systems to handle the total flow. I'm not saying it would have been practical. I think the practical choice was here, but that's a piece of history, that how we got here. But what we agreed to do back then was the collection system is all jointly owned by ownership percentage, and then maintenance and repairs on it, it's gonna be split out that way. So then, the smart thing to do is keep it well maintained, replace things as they wear out. We don't wanna get into who pays for which pump replacement, because then we get into the possibility of degenerate situations, and really, when it comes down to the very bottom of it, our regulators don't care. They just wanna keep this thing working. And what helps most, and this is something Rick has brought up a number of times about how we split out, how we pay for flow, at least on the capital infrastructure that's jointly owned. That's one where I don't think anything other than a fixed percentage split makes any sense at all, because of how we got to where we are and how we need to keep things going so we don't spill.
Scott, I think part of the problem comes from a misunderstanding that was stated at a council meeting a month or somewhere between a month and 2 months ago. And unfortunately, I don't remember if it was Rick or Alan that said it, but
If it was wrong, it must be Alan.
Yep.
in any case, one of Half Moon Bay's two SAM reps was talking about how Half Moon Bay pays for all the maintenance in their section and half here, but that's not true, because SAM doesn't have facilities in Half Moon Bay except for the plant. And the IPS, which is part of SAM, is what goes all the way up through the other districts, all the way to Montera. So it's only the SAM infrastructure that you're paying for, and the member agencies, all three member agencies, pay for maintenance of their own collection systems. So the things in Half Moon Bay, even though they're big ticket items, you have one fairly large lift station there. That's a Half Moon Bay collection system facility, it's not part of SAM. And so that's where the misunderstanding is.
Would it help if we have some warning on some of these major ticket items? So if you know it's coming up, we could have, this kind of discussion and to make sure everybody's clear about them before
It certainly
check goes out.
helps. It certainly helps. So it's something that, I mean, it's no shocker to anybody. It's something that the city of Half Moon Bay struggles with. We all want to maintain the integrity of the sewage system, and that's the first priority. We all want to make sure there's no spills, no trouble, but seeing it coming, having a little advanced discussion, it would be helpful.
One thing I'd like to point out about this particular payment, there's several rebuilds spread across Portola and Montera, along with annual inspections of our influent and effluent pumps here at the plant. So there's a lot of work at multiple sites that got lumped into one invoice for $33,000.
So-
It wasn't a $33,000 labor expense or labor and parts on one pump. I would have gone apoplectic at that.
Here's the item that goes with it, it's this big thick thing. And listed on it is a number of things: repair pump number 2, volume repair, swing unit, MTR pumps number 2 through 4, Portola, Ocean Colony swing unit rebuild. So it sounds like this would actually be billed out, some to SAM, some to member agencies, right?
Something like that.
Well, I mean, the Ocean Colony lift station, or the swing unit, is that, that's part of their infrastructure, right? So that would be billed out to them,
Correct.
but some of the SAM stuff would be billed out to SAM. So I think the interesting thing here would be making sure it's being charged against the right accounts.
That's also true.
Yeah.
That's also true.
But I mean, it's several different items, so as you started talking, I'm realizing, it's probably not just one big thing.
So I don't want to take us down too big a rat hole. I just want to make that comment, and I appreciate if we have some advanced discussion of the big items. That's helpful.
Absolutely.
I'm really concerned about the Portola pump rebuild, and I don't keep all the stuff in my head and didn't have time to research it, but it kind of feels to me like there was a huge expenditure on Portola pumps not that long ago, and so I'm wondering if we could get a report from staff at the next board meeting, hopefully, on
Repair activity,
say the
yeah.
last 5 years or so. I don't know what the right time range is, but say 5 years unless you know of a reason to go further back than that. And give us what the repair history of each of the pumps is and how much we spent on them.
I think that's a good idea.
And the other comment I would make, by the way, is Half Moon Bay has the Ocean Colony lift station that you pay for yourselves. Granada has the Naples Beach lift station, which is really small. And then
How
Montera
many does
has,
Montera have?
I think it's 13, but is it 17? I don't know, some big number that they pay for all themselves.
16.
16.
Number seems to change every time I ask, so.
Does that include all your bulk board ones and all your secret ones as well?
Well, I thought we weren't gonna talk about those.
Okay, can we have a motion to pick up items 3BA and 3C?
Did we approve the others, or can we do them all at once?
We approved the other ones.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Unanimous, great. Moving on to item 4, old business.
We suggested that we go on to
Oh,
5D, if it's okay.
5D.
If I
for
could
the
just say
chair.
to anybody at home watching, one of the things that cost us real money is when we flush rags. And I'm looking at these and it's like, it's on every other page, don't flush rags. Okay. That's the end of our public service announcement.
Or those little plastic things on the fruit you buy, make sure you peel those off. Okay, wow.
Rags foul the pumps, so,
As Jim mentioned, we're gonna jump to the Kehoe issue for the people here, who are here for that item. This is item 5D, an informational update on activities related to the Kehoe water course.
Just as a brief introduction, I wanted to say thank you very much to Dante, Mo, and Bruce, for coming down here. They graciously offered after I attended kind of just an informational update with them. So I want to say thank you very much for taking time out of your evening here to come down here and do some questioning and answers. As a lead into that, it appeared to me in my discussions with you that most of the plans and discussions were a very preliminary phase, and so I appreciate you coming down here for some clarification for that. With that, I'll open that up to question and answers for you as the board as to some of the ongoing efforts that they're making. That's all right.
Who would be making the presentation for the folks?
Did you want the presentation?
Give us a quick update on what's been happening.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Dante Hall. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Half Moon Bay. I've been here for almost a year now. And Community Development is a new department which includes planning, engineering, code enforcement, what else, guys? A bunch of other stuff. The stuff people complain about is what it is. And with me tonight is our Planning Services Manager, Bruce Sambo, and our City Engineer, who is Mo Sherman. In October of 2014, we came to City Council and requested some money to resolve the issue over at Kehoe Ditch. There was an ongoing issue about erosion, flooding, and fire damage. And so we wanted to put together a design team to go out and talk with the neighbors about alternatives, and then return back to City Council with a preferred alternative or some recommendations for us to pursue. We had a conference call with Rob before we went to City Council. We had a conference call with Rob and talked to him about what we plan to do. We plan to go to the neighbors, and everything was really preliminary at the time. And just wanted to hear from him any kind of initial concerns or anything that Sam or Sam's board might have had for us. So the design team that we're working with is Callender and Associates, David Powers and Associates for our CEQA, SWCA, and Schaaf and Wheeler, our engineering team. And again, the goal was for us to come up with this preferred alternative that would be good for the City Council, obviously, the residents, Sam and other property owners that were across or affected by the ditch, the Coastal Commission, the Planning Commission, and so forth. And we also asked the team to really evaluate not only the things about flooding and fire risk, but also evaluate, how difficult would alternatives be to permit. We wanted an idea, a sense of doing that. We wanted to know any encroachment issues that we had to deal with. We wanted to know what type of impacts to the habitat we were going to have, construction costs, and then other things that might affect the feasibility of doing the project. So we met with the residents on December 2nd, and we had 4 different alternatives. The residents provided some comments, and we've narrowed down the alternatives to 2 alternatives. And we evaluated everything from staying within the easement to a pipe to expanding the ditch just a little bit to allow for additional flow. But the residents and staff and the design team are going to be presenting 2 alternatives actually on February 5th is our next meeting, and we've invited Rob to come and be a part of that meeting. And we're going to be able to answer some questions and follow-up questions that some of the residents had, and also look at some potential costs for doing that. Our goal and our plan after that is to go and talk to our city council about some different options. And based on that decision, we would obviously start to talk with Sam about any potential impacts or negotiations we have to have. We would start to consult with our different agencies. As you know, in our ditch, there are a lot of different agencies that have jurisdiction. So we'll probably have to talk to and communicate with all of them. This project we're anticipating will be probably a 4-year project to actually provide a preferred project, identify funding, get through the environmental, get through the permitting and construction. Really takes us through the end, actually, of 2018. And as we get a little bit more meat on the bones, we'll be happy to come back and provide updates and answer any questions that the board may have. So that's just everything in a nutshell. If there are any questions, I'm here, my technical people are here, and we can answer any questions.
Since it's kind of being developed still at this point, I'm happy to have Rob be our information source as they narrow down these alternatives. If he can keep us informed at each meeting, just so we know all the effects on us here, the property and what would change here.
I want to make one comment while the Half Moon Bay staff are here. If you want my vote here, you're going to stop calling it the Kehoe Ditch. It's a water course. I can show you an 1860 map that shows the stream over where the subdivision is now. It was moved for the convenience of the subdivider. It is a 150-year-old map showing that stream there. It is not a ditch, and I just get really irritated every time somebody refers to it as a ditch, because the only difference between a ditch and a stream is a ditch is an inconveniently located stream. There is no other biological difference. So I ask you very firmly to stop calling it a ditch, or I will just vote no on it on general principles.
Duly noted. Any other questions?
Scott?
I've got a few. You presented 4 alternatives to some of the interested parties, but we're the biggest single adjacent landowner. And in fact, I have seen some of what was presented, although you haven't brought a copy tonight, and I'm going to just mention, I think that's a mistake not to bring those tonight.
I thought it's on our property, mostly.
Let me get through this. We're a pretty significant partner on this, and I don't know that this is the correct approach to working with a partner. Without our cooperation, you got nothing. That doesn't make any sense. We have a big interest in working with our neighbors who are affected to the other side of the water course to find resolution on this. They've come to us a number of times to talk to us about this, and I'm really very surprised and disappointed that this is the first time that we've seen it. And here we are, I don't have any drawings or conceptuals or even a general description, but what I'll share with my fellow board members is that some of these rely entirely on crossing through the property that we own. And here, the only reason we know that is because I've said it. You haven't brought anything to show that. You haven't mentioned that. I don't know that this is a constructive approach. And before we get off on the wrong foot any further, I'd like to ask that you do bring back to us, the board members, the policymakers, something to help us visualize what it is that you're considering. And I urge you strongly to engage us as working partners on this. We have a very deep interest in this, and conceptualizing with our neighbors about what you would do with the property that we hold in benefit for the community seems like a rather odd approach. So you mentioned then that we would...
May I respond to that quickly?
If you'll hold for a minute.
Okay.
You mentioned that you've got some process in mind, you'll go back to the city, and then you'll be back to talk to us some more. I think, again, that would be perhaps missing an opportunity to work with us. So, I would like all of us to receive invitations to meetings when you're inviting the community members, so that we can, at our option, participate and be informed to the degree that we individually as elected members of this board see fit, if you would. I'd appreciate that.
I agree with all.
Could we
Director Boyd's
possibly
comments.
schedule a presentation on our next agenda? If you guys could come do a quick presentation, that'd be.
So, we'd be happy to do that. Our first responsibility obviously is to our council. We have tried to communicate to your executive officer before we engage in the process and
I'm
during
sorry,
the
hang on.
process.
If you'll hold on that. I actually checked after you had had the meeting with the community to see if our general manager had been contacted, and no. So,
In fairness to them, they did give me a phone call, but the level of, I probably didn't appreciate the level of the seriousness of the discussion at the time. To me, it seemed very preliminary, so that's, I'll take that as far as not notifying me. That responsibility is probably mine.
one of the things I'm particularly interested in is an understanding of the actual meets and bounds and where the proposals will cross property lines, so we can be really, really clear on that from the get-go.
Sure, and
Pretty great.
just so you know, there are 4 options. We will have that detail. One of the options does not involve the Sam property at all. And so before we went down the path too far, we didn't want to come and give you a presentation and start negotiating before we had a direction.
I think that'd be great, because like, just another example from the Granada Sanitary District, there were these highway visioning groups.
Sure.
They came in with all these proposals, including placing community centers in the middle of our property, driving freeways through it. And the first we found out about it was, you know, they had 7 options, and we had never been contacted in Granada about how people were going to use our property. So that would be a good, as soon as, if you can, you know, bring us up to date at the next meeting.
Sure will.
And then we can just flow along together and help out.
I have a question on the different options. The one that I like the best, which I don't think you mentioned.
We don't have any materials here at all to talk about this
Well,
stuff.
but this is really easy. We talked about a meander through the property, and it sounds like you're not considering that.
Why do you think that?
Why don't we wait till next
So
month
here's
to
the
actually
thing,
look at the
see,
plans?
what he's inclined to do, we haven't had the opportunity to even find out, is it in consideration or not? And if we have any ideas that you're not considering, that you might feel are actually superior to the ones that you're considering, we've thought about this property a lot. We've thought about that water course a lot. We've thought about the endangered species that inhabit that property a lot.
Sure.
We've thought about the adjacent property, which is also clearly impacted as habitat. We know this pretty well, and to some degree, we know it better than our neighbors do because we've spent money having it studied. So please involve us to a greater degree. As one board member, I'm letting you know, I think that would be very productive.
So I think we're all on the same page.
Yes.
We'd love to see I know it's gonna go to the council and all that, and I think it behooves Rob to be more deeply involved, and I think we'd like to have you come back and give a presentation
Sure.
of
Happy to do that.
a full update on the project and the options.
I think that'd be great.
But let me be really clear, I want to be invited to the meetings. If
Yeah.
you're meeting with our neighbors in the neighborhood over there, I think it,
If you could send
Makes a
an
whole lot
invitation
of
to
sense.
Rob can push it out to the board, that'd be easier for
when
me.
projects require
Small Rob.
a lot of participants to all throw their support in, it's good to involve them early and not set up.
Great.
So one of the pieces of documentation that you'll need to bring when you do the presentation back to this board is an aerial photo with our property line very clearly indicated on
Actually,
it.
Rob, could I ask you to find out what we know about the boundaries?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
But there should be, from the acquisition, there should be a fairly good description in the deed.
Because we're certainly have been all in favor of resolving this issue too. We want to help out and get it moved along as expeditiously as possible to make everybody happy, so.
And we've had discussions in the past here at the board about what we might do with helping alter the waterway so that it has a less impact on the neighbors, less scouring, less erosion, more meander. We've got some thoughts on this and have talked to people in different state agencies to talk about the possibility for funding, so I'm glad you wanna solve it, we wanna solve it too, so let's work together.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, folks. Okay, jumping back into the sequence, to old business, 4A, discussion possible action regarding adopting of the guiding principles for recycled water by the member agencies and by CCWD.
At their last meeting, CCWD reviewed the principles as drafted and approved them. So it is, at this time, all interested parties have reviewed and approved the principles. And I had a question for, as far as the next steps in the process. What we have now is 5 basic, guiding principles with signatures from each agency. And do we need to come up with a master document for original signatures for guiding principles? So to have one sent out to each agency or could we combine, if I get the signature page from each member agency, can we combine that into one document to move forward? The reason I was looking at it was to try and, if we have to ship it around the document, so we have one, fully executed agreement with original wet signatures on it. There's gonna be a lot of back and forth time trying to track down the presidents of the 4 agencies plus the 4 directors. But if getting the
Executed counterparts, that's what.
can we do that? Okay. So that was gonna be one of my first questions. And then the next one was with Director Alifano being gone from, the Half Moon Bay needs a new representative for the Recycled Water Committee.
So I'd be happy to be on that if you'll have me.
Well, maybe.
Oh, you're on that? Oh, wait, no.
Just kidding. Of course, you're welcome to be.
No, wait a minute, you don't have to go to the meetings, that's me.
I'm not, I was just.
Oh, you're not even on it?
I'm not even on it.
Yeah, man, that's
Yeah, but it's so much fun watching Rick squirm.
you guys gonna thumb wrestle for this, or?
No, I think we're good, unless you have
No, it's okay.
stronger interest.
So,
As long as you can approve it.
of course. Do we need a motion or just the sense of the board that we're appointing?
It's
Rick?
the sense of the Half Moon Bay representatives to give us something.
Okay.
We don't have to vote on that.
Sounds like consensus.
Unless there's an objection.
Well, I mean, the only thing I object to is having 2 Ricks on the same subcommittee. It's gonna be confusing. We're just gonna have to.
And one of them is misspelled.
One is
We're gonna have
Richard
to-
and one
I know you've had the same problem now with Deborah and Deborah.
The only thing that I would object to is if I was on the committee.
And we're not gonna say anything about that. The question we had was, I guess we kind of left it, because we sort of stopped the meetings. I know we wanted to move forward with, what I would call the committee talked about was, basic data gathering. With all the information we've got so far,
What I was going to.
what can you do to update that, to say, here's what we had so far, here's what the costs are today, this is how we should.
What I was going to propose is that maybe I coordinate a meeting with the with the core group of the Recycled Water Committee, so we can sit down and talk about the next steps in the path, what direction we wanna go to. So that would be the kind of, now that we've got the guiding principles drafted, that we convene a meeting where it is just the primary parties, just the committee and myself, and come up with a path forward. Then once we've come up with that, then maybe we could set up a secondary meeting where we bring in all the interested parties to start the discussion, because I believe we would have, some of the topics might be review of the existing or the previously done studies, discussion of whether we want to do a new study. Anyway, what I'm getting at is we come up with kind of a draft agenda for that meeting with some path, potential action paths, and we can sit down and discuss that. And then talk about some of the other things that we probably have to do. I can assume that sooner or later, there's gonna have to be some kind of legal agreements that become part of this, how to coordinate those next steps and things like that. But I think the
I'd like
first.
to find out, I'm wondering if the sequence of events might be, so get the committee together, it's not a subcommittee. because the subcommittee is a committee of a committee, right? So
Enough that between you
sorry,
and
I
Leonard
just
can
got to
argue
be
that.
the
That's fine.
pedantic one, but, so have the committee get together and see what work we have to draw from without spending real big money, and see how much of this we have assembled. And I know we got pretty far with it last time. And, well, I mean, we're at the point where we're asking the feds for money, so I mean, it's pretty far along. Review that, and then from that, identify what things we think need to be studied, designed, whatever, in order to be able to take something tangible to the larger group. What I'm imagining then would be come back to this board as a whole, discuss where we might spend some money to take things forward, get the sense of the board about whether or not we're willing to front some of that money, or if we want to wait to see that we're further along in the process before we put some in, or if we go to somebody else and say, you pony up that money. I think until we see where we are, and I think, Rob, you're well situated to give us a bird's eye view of this. Get that plan together, bring it back to all of us, so then we can know what the sense of the board is on how to go forward with our partners. I think then that makes a meeting with them more productive, because then we're not in there making things up. We actually have, we know we have this to bring to the table. We think, we need this much more for it to really be useful for our part of the process. That's what I'm imagining.
Do we want to look at dates for the committee and pick a date real quick right now, or
We could do that.
if people have calendars available, or?
Who is
So-
currently on the committee?
So that's, he's new to the committee, he's still getting used to raising his hand. So, city council meetings are first and third
Third.
Tuesdays, so could we do something in the second week of February perhaps? So we're not all having extra meetings.
Just
on-
for reference, I'm gonna be gone the 5th through the 10th to visit my mom who broke her hip.
Yeah.
She's getting back now, so she's been cleared to go back home with a walker. That'll be about the time she'll be coming home, so.
Amazing.
Anyway, I'll be gone the 5th through the 10th, so
Would the 11th work, Thursday night?
11th is a Wednesday.
I have 12th as a
Oh,
Thursday.
I'm in June. I'm planning way ahead.
So,
Way ahead.
we'll do a starter day,
What,
to start our day with the meeting, they do it 8 o'clock?
I could do that.
8 on the 12th, is that what we're saying?
I'm just,
Well, we could go-
I'm just wondering if it's even feasible
when you're
to,
back.
as opposed to being back here at 6, which is difficult for me.
No,
start-
8's easier for me. I mean, I don't like it.
8 a.m., well,
Yeah.
I could start my day.
Yeah.
Easier than I could end my day. Because my days tend not to end.
Yeah.
With all that fantastic discussion, was
I
the
can't believe
answer
all
8
the traffic on the
p.m.?
road before
I
7 p.m.
was suggesting
That was amazing
I was
tonight.
suggesting AM.
8
Yeah.
a.m.
Yeah, can you do that?
I have lots of free time now.
So 8 a.m. on the 12th of February?
I mean,
You
I
guys don't have
actually
to be
prefer
here.
day
We could,
meetings.
well, Rob needs to be here.
No, I
Sorry.
think everybody should be here.
Since you
I
left the
think
room,
Jeanette
it's now 8 o'clock.
Susan should be there.
We're gonna be here.
Rob,
every
can you
week.
make this?
But I think Rob starts his day at ODark 30.
Yeah, I start pretty early, so
All right,
8
so-
a.m. is,
So is that lunchtime for you?
that'll,
So
Second
you wanna meet
breakfast.
here at Sam, you wanna meet out and about, does it matter?
If it's easier for Rob, let's just meet here.
well,
Well, you know, if
You're already here.
I'm gonna say out and about.
you're thinking Pete's, aren't you?
Pizza, coffee company, yeah, one or the other.
Yeah, I could do that.
Just for the heck of it, could you send the agenda when it's final to all the directors?
So Thursday morning, 8 a.m., February 12th at Pete's.
My clocks don't read that early.
Okay,
What to do if you stay up?
Leonard will not be bothering us at the meeting, we just figured that out. Okay, I have 8 a.m.
We figured
at
it out.
Pete's, that's fine.
It's amazing. All these years, we finally figured out your kryptonite.
Save, okay, we're done. Okay, thanks, that's moving forward quickly. Old business B, ratify adoption of the salary schedule for the unrepresented employees as required by CalPERS.
this, just for an
We don't
update.
wanna mess with CalPERS.
This is something we had to do last year, if you recall, when they asked for a certified, unrepresented payroll for, the technical services supervisor Cullen and for for Jeanette. So this is a rehash of that request from CalPERS. And all this is doing is memorializing what the board had directed to me in closed session when we had the discussion about the performance evaluation and the raises. There's no change in the rate or anything like that. This is just what CalPERS wants to see is those figures memorialized by board action so that they can say this was the approved rate.
You didn't put
In open session.
In open
We'll
session,
see it
excuse
In
me.
open session.
You didn't put the actual suggested motion language in here, so I'm not sure
Mhm.
what the motion should
Does
be.
it have
I
to
would
be
like
a
to move
resolution?
that we
or is this-
adopt the,
Salary schedule?
I guess it would be to
the schedule as presented.
I second the motion.
Aye.
Does that sound okay, Jim?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
And aye, done, okay. New business.
Have to move it along.
Okay, we got D out of the way, let's go back to new business A. Adopt resolution, next sequence, a resolution of intent to amend CalPERS contract.
Just for an update, this is the next step that CalPERS requires in the process that was agreed upon in the last MOU, where the part of that agreement was that the employees would bear any additional retirement costs over the 14.424%. This is the next step for the employees to even have a valid vote for CalPERS. First, the sewer authority has to adopt this resolution saying, employees, please vote. So that's the next step, so that we can get the ballots to the employees in the next several days, have them vote on this, and then those votes go back to CalPERS. Then this will actually come back to the board again.
Next one to finally resolve it.
It's a very complicated process to get to.
And these
on
are all
CalPERS.
the rates and the schedules that we had negotiated
Correct,
prior to
correct.
that.
This
So
is-
this is just a,
Enacting what was already agreed upon in the MOU.
So did you just say that the current rate is 14%?
It's gone up to 15.189.
8.9. So the current rate is at 15.189, and the MOU stipulates anything over 14.424, the employees would share in that cost. So there's a difference of 0.765, and this is just a vehicle to get the process going.
CalPERS will not allow us to make manipulations on the employee's side without the employees having a vote in the matter, and they have very strict guidelines on how this takes place. And so that for Sam to not be paying the 15+% in order to bring us in alignment with what they agreed to, which was that expense would be capped for Sam at 14.424. We have to go through this process.
Now, this is something totally different from the previously employer-paid employee share that was 7%.
Yeah.
And that was,
Correct.
I think,
We're down
5%
to-
and then 4%, and then, where are we on that?
We're at 3 and 4 currently. The employees bear 3.
And so this is just because of some unrelated increase in CalPERS costs?
Correct. There's two tracks here. There was the agreement for the employees over a course of several years to pick up what Sam had been paying at 1% per year. Then there was the secondary piece of that agreement that any other increase in the normalized cost from CalPERS above the 14.42 would also be picked up by the employees. That's what makes it so
This is-
complicated, because they have very strict rules on cost shifting at that level.
Well, of course they do, because the whole CalPERS board is made up of CalPERS beneficiaries.
Correct. And anyway, so they have some, their rules with conducting employee elections it's extraordinarily intricate.
So what would happen, and hopefully this is just theoretical, what would happen if the employees don't vote to approve this?
If they voted no to approve, I would have to take a look at the,
We don't move forward.
yeah, it
Yeah.
does,
We
Would
don't move
they be
forward.
in violation of the MOU if they don't vote for it?
terms in the MOU where it would, I think we back it back down out of the base salary. So it's,
That's true, yes.
that's,
I'm sorry about that.
it-
It says that if the affected employees don't approve the additional percent contribution, it will be made as a reduction in their wages. So we'd get the money one way or another,
In other words, they're gonna
Yeah.
vote for it.
It's
Yeah.
theirs, yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of your Plomo of plata choice, you know, you get the letter, you get silver,
but CalPERS wouldn't be involved at that level. I mean, CalPERS stipulates that we have to do a resolution of intent, they have to do a secret ballot, and if they vote no, then CalPERS is out of that, and we would just deduct it out of their salaries.
I'd like to move that we adopt the SAM resolution next in sequence, a resolution of intention to approve an amendment to contract between the Board of Administration, California Public Employees Retirement System, and the Board of Directors of Authority Midcoastside.
Second.
I'll let you guys fight. How about Debbie, because she's new,
I have to
let
give
her
it
get
to
some
the
points.
senior
She needs to get into the mix.
Vice President now.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Item 5B, discussion and possible action, refund to SAM member agencies. Love the fact that money is available.
And this is a new part of this process to me, but apparently every year, there's an estimate made by our SAM accountant as towards what he anticipates that the potential refund would be, and this year, his estimate is $15,772, and what I was looking for was a direction as to the pleasure of the board, as the disposition of that, those funds. From an operational perspective, of course, I would like to see that moved into, you know, back into some of the projects that I'm gonna discuss. But I didn't want to presume anything towards that end, and so there are several options, but it could be rendered back to the member agencies along the ownership split, so.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
It wasn't paid by ownership. It's operational money, it was paid by flow.
I'd have, if we're gonna, if we come into some of these discussions, I might have to bring in our accountant to break down.
I'd like to suggest it may be moot, since the amount is so small.
Well, it's the principle of it.
No, I
I
understand.
mean, we're talking literally dollars here, you know, in single or double
Right,
digit
and
dollars,
that's
but
why
it's the
I'm-
principle
That's
of
why
it.
I'm suggesting that, depending on what we do with our action, we may not have to worry about how to break that down.
Well,
I mean, so let me just mention that we got into this business of looking each year at the excess over budget, what was actually spent, because we saw quite large sums being scooped aside and put into slush funds.
every year.
And this isn't that kind of money,
Right.
and I mean, I'll just tell you before we discuss anything, I don't see this as the kind of money that's worth the staff time to try to figure out how to redistribute, since it's only gonna come back for other requests that we know.
The reason that I always argue for refunding it is, it gives the greatest transparency to, what all the money is for, whereas if it's just, you know, put back into one budget or another, it gets harder to understand the money flow, and so I think it's just simpler for, to do
My
clean
inclination
accounting
is
each
to
year,
support
year to
option
year.
one. Clean accounting,
Other thoughts?
you know,
So
You're nodding your heads, but does that mean you like option one?
I think,
option one.
yes, for the reason stated, option one, even though dollars are small, it's, from an accounting perspective, it's clean and it's transparent. And it shouldn't take more than 15 seconds to figure out how to redistribute it, whether it's, however it is. I don't
It
care
needs
how
to
it
be
is.
on the proportionate that it was paid in, whatever that
Yeah,
is.
Yes.
whatever that is.
And I'd agree with that,
Jim,
if we do it right.
Well, I was gonna speak for option two, but, since we'll need the money soon for current projects, but I'll go along with option one, if that's the pleasure.
I might mention that he does offer option three, which would be hold it and then let the board decide dollar for dollar how it would be spent out.
I think when we get a new budget for new projects, we just fund those projects.
I'm perfectly willing to go along. I mean, I would have gone option two also, just to avoid the pain, but predominantly everybody's going option one, so I'm perfectly happy to go with that.
I move that the excess revenue be returned to the member agencies according to the percentage that each member agency paid into that.
Second.
But that would be for that annual, for all of 2014, is what
The,
we're
fiscal.
discussing, right, fiscal.
Yeah, the fiscal.
Okay. And Debbie seconded, any more
Let me
comments?
just ask, Rob, do you know offhand, or Jeanette, do you know offhand, is that all out of operating revenue, or is that from multiple portions of the budget?
I wouldn't know, I would have to discuss it with the accountant.
Yeah, we better
and
bring
get
that
his
down later, Tom,
expertise.
just to-
If it looks too weird and strange, you can bring it back, you know,
Yeah, let's not spend $15,000 figuring it out.
yes.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say, how much it, you know?
It might be nice if we can, if the process becomes straightforward, we might wanna memorialize the process, so it's easier next time.
Okay.
You know, say, take these 5 numbers, add them, and divide by whatever, and move forward, so, okay.
Should've sent you
Okay.
chocolate earlier, we
Um,
got a different result.
All those officially in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Passes again.
Scott,
Item 5C, a way to spend money. Authorize manager to purchase the waste heat exchanger.
Currently, we have a waste heat exchanger that has a hole in it, and the staff has put a repair clamp around the particular piece, but basically, I believe it's a sewer repair clamp?
It is, yeah.
It's a Band-Aid.
In order
Really
to, exactly, to Band-Aid something that is actually a fairly critical piece of equipment for maintaining the health of our digesters. And so this is just a request to purchase a replacement heat exchanger from the current provider of those kinds of parts and services to SAM. And the updated quote was for $36,502, and I asked for a 2.5% contingency in case when they get into the work, they end up with a little bit more laborers and miscellaneous parts. So the total request is for $37,415.
So, can you speak to why sole source?
What,
I mean,
we've got
you
a
have-
quote for another unit, but they didn't give us a quote for any of the installation. What the sole source is, RF McDonald has done all the work up to date on our equipment, and they have the heat exchanger in stock.
Okay, but do you have a high confidence level that you're not gonna get any noticeably better price from anybody else?
We got a quote just for the heat exchanger itself, and I wanna say it was close to, was it?
If I can interject.
Please do.
We actually did get a quote from another vendor that is in running with RF McDonald, and they were actually higher than the RF McDonald quote, and then
Okay.
Rob will fill you in on the other options we.
The other option that I was speaking for was that we got a quote just for the replacement unit itself with none of the labor to install it, and that was, I think, $29,000, somewhere in there, 28, 29.
Just for the heat exchanger.
Just for the
itself.
heat exchanger, and so to my mind, for the labor and work, the price difference of $6,000 does not seem excessive when we have one person or one company that's coming in to quote to do it, and they're high, then we've got RF McDonald, and then we've got another quote that says, well, here's the unit, but it's just the unit, not the labor. So I feel fairly confident nothing is happening that's untoward or financially negative towards us, and this will get us the unit replaced, I think, in the most rapid model.
I move we authorize the manager to purchase replacement waste heat exchanger utilizing RF McConnell as the sole source for the exchanger and the related installation labor in the amount not to exceed $37,415. And could you send in my font size memo?
Control plus in the PDF viewer, just make it bigger yourself.
Then I have to scroll left and right.
I'll second. Do we have an expectation set with RF McDonald about a date by which this must be installed?
Did they give you any idea?
Not currently, because they have to get the unit, so once they actually get it and get all built, they'll contact us and we'll have a better idea of when it's actually gonna be installed.
So is this a big hunk of metal that might have some significant scrap value?
It has, I suppose it could.
We can send it to an iron yard, it's probably, I don't see it having any residual value other than the iron in it. how
Yeah.
much that would be.
Well, that's why I'm asking scrap value.
Sure.
That's worth considering.
Okay, was that,
That was second, so, that's all I got.
was that seconded? Who made the actual motion again now? Was there a second on that?
That was me.
Second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We've done 5D, 5E, an informational update related to the record rain event of December 11 and 12, the great flood of 2014.
Almost the only way on the back.
What I wanted to do is just put together kind of a synopsis of those few days and put it into some perspective, and then bring up some concerns of myself and the staff as towards what that might mean, and also highlight one of the facts. I'll touch on it when everything gets warmed up here. But overall, I would say that the performance of Sam was very good. I did a little bit of research on other area agencies as far as that event goes through CWIX, through the Water Quality Reporting Database. And there were 8 overflow events that were 100,000 gallons or greater in the San Francisco Basin. There was one that was 2.4 million. And there was one that was 380,000 gallons.
Who was the 2.4 million?
It was Richmond. But, and, you know, in fairness to them, when you see some of the graphics I'm gonna show here, when you get that much water in that short amount of time, there's only so much, sometimes that hydraulically, any place can withstand. And I did some research going back several decades here to see what would be the worst possible case scenario, what could happen.
It'd be 95, 96, I think.
82, 83.
Oh, before my time. But I understand that where the street in front of my house is today, there was 4 feet of water there in 82, 83.
There was, I don't want to spoil my thunder here. Okay, that's the storm of 14, just as for the reference. What that is a 24-hour rain total. I call it my death blossom or my ground zero picture, because what you're looking at, the white there is 10.
Spent a lot of time in Berkeley in the 60s. Does that suggest other things?
It's like Grateful Dead love those.
It's a good weekend right there. A 10-inch rainfall accumulation, but fortunately it passed a little bit to the south of us.
Wow.
But that's, I had that as a graphic on my phone while I was in a mad panic during those couple of days to try and communicate what we were seeing. I have an animation of that, it just didn't really work well with this, but you can see that grow, and it spreads just like an explosion when you look at it. But this, we really were pretty impacted for a short period of time. That was a pretty heavy event. Okay, so one of the things, at least one of the things that Sam did have, we had the luxury of getting a little bit of a heads up from the Weather Service that this was going to be a significant event. So we took some action in advance the week before the storm was to hit. And one of the key things that staff pointed out to me, and we were noticing we were having issues with Montera, one of the pumps ragging up where it was ingesting rags into the suction side of the pump. So we thought, well, we'll go out there and we'll inspect that wet well, we'll clean it, and do a confined space entry. So we went in, we did that, and we found a significant amount of rags, which the significance of that is if we had had a rag sucked into a pump that had even decreased the performance of one of the pumps, we probably would have had an overflow. That's first.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder earlier about the rags.
The second thing is out at Montera, and I'll get to this later, we've got a pump out of service, and it's been out of service for many, many years for reasons I'll go into later, but it's something we should address. The next thing we did, we confirmed the spare parts. Tony Pullen, to his great credit, did a lot of work to stockpile a lot of parts in advance of issues like this. And so we went through, we verified we had a lot of the critical pieces of equipment, which turned out to work well in our favor. And then we got in touch with one of our contract electricians and set up kind of a on-call, made sure they were going to be available for standby, because one of the issues that the killer issues with storms like that is with our pump stations, we have something that burns out or blows up, especially since in-house we don't have an electrician. We need the ability for somebody that's certified to work on those medium voltage issues immediately, because they're just, some of the flows we were experiencing, you really have minutes before you have a serious issue.
So did you find somebody on the coast side?
Well, we ended up going with Calcon, who traditionally has done they're just familiar, they do all our servicing work for our electrical systems.
I've heard time getting them here, but it wasn't you.
They were here, we paid them to be here. And, yes, and it turned out that there was a cost to that. That cost saved our butts, to be very honest with you. He was hopping from place to place, dealing with electrical issues on not just not just SAM facilities, but some member agency issues with electrical problems also. And that was one of those moments, Tim, where I almost said I don't want to do it, because I knew there was going to be a cost to it. But when you in an organization like this, there's a few critical pieces of talent, and if you don't have them, when you really need them, there is no substitute for that person, and an electrician is one of them.
And ultimately, if you expect to need them, it's cheaper than the overflows.
Correct, and the going rate for an overflow can go as high as $10 a gallon, so the offset with the cost is there. I mean, generally, I think that when I was doing some of my research with Pacifica, they got fined $2.3 million for a 6 million gallon overflow. So it's not necessarily $10 a gallon, but generally the water board looks at it like, if you had an infrastructure issue and you didn't address it, we're going to fine you as much as it takes to force you to fix that issue. And I'll get to some of the details on that later, but that's in my past experience with up at Lake Tahoe. Usually the fines are just about commensurate to say we're not so much interested in really punishing the district, but we're going to force you to put that infrastructure in the ground, or we're going to force you to build out that staff model or whatever that takes, so that doesn't happen again.
So this is a retainer contract?
With the electrician? This was we have them on kind of a retainer contract to do the servicing around here, and they're very familiar with a lot of our telemetry and those issues. And so when we got them out here, we knew this was coming. The suggestion was, why don't we put them up in a motel and keep them here, because we know when the rain was coming down at 1 inch an hour or more. And it was a good decision. It was a little painful at first, but I don't have any regrets with it, because the number of things that he fixed in a short amount of time really helped us. And if we hadn't had that out here, it would have been hours getting here.
And hotel room costs is what the fine for
our peak flows going through the plant was something like 7,600 gallons a minute. That's about 11 MGD broken down if you like a peak flow.
Yeah,
And we had peaks of about 11 MGD. That's like an instantaneous flow through here. But do the math on it. You think about that kind of flow.
That's the biggest flow that's been through this plant since the rebuild.
I'm not sure if that's, but there was a pretty
It
long.
was on par with some flows we got about 5 years ago. I was looking at some historical stuff the other day. But it was, it was a lot.
Now, in terms of the other people here understanding what the plant is capable of, shortly after the rebuild was completed, there was some major storm, and then manager Dave Dixon ran. He as a test, he shut down half the plant and showed that you can run over close to 7.5 MGD flow rate through half the plant, which means that it meets the design goal of 15 MGD wet weather flow.
Was this the 98 El Nino?
I think so.
Oh, this was outside my front door.
The plant wasn't finished.
Where was this at?
That was right up at Patrick, that's my girls with my iPhone when I was running frantically for the door to get down to the plant.
That was where?
It's up in Patrick Way, behind where the stables are. I live in those condominiums up there,
By the post office.
by the post office.
Oh.
But
Stone
it
line.
was coming down in sheets, and it was washing across that little bank and into my garage, so
Nice.
that's what generated that original video. But I just, if this were better equipped for sound, you could really hear the rain pounding, but you also had like girls giggling.
I have to correct what I just said, it had, you're right, it had to be 97, 98, because I was off by a couple of years in my head of when the plant rebuild was finished.
Yeah, I think they opened up in '97.
Yeah.
For this event, the real meat and potatoes of the rain event happened from about 6 o'clock on the morning of the 11th, and it tapered off about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning on the 12th. Rain gauge data that we've got on our equipment, Montera had 5.25 inches in that period. Portola had 3. We here at the plant got 4.3.
Did you check the calibration on that first?
It felt like more when I was out there, I guarantee you. Plant flow, we had 2 days about 6.6 MGD while all that flow worked its way through the plant. And we had a peak load down here at the plant of about 11 MGD, which, like I said, I did a rough calculation on it, 7,600 gallons per minute, which makes this place look pretty full from our perspective. I think, you know, I can safely speak for the staff. We were white knuckling every minute while we were here. That storm, at least for that day, was the second highest rain rate recorded for that particular date and time in Half Moon Bay. That's according to the review, so I can't really vet that data. But, you know, I wanted to give attribution to the quote before I said something. I want to talk a little bit about the IPS performance, and what that is a graphic is one of the construction designs for the wet weather flow management facility that was installed out in Portola a few years back. And one of the things I want to highlight with that is that facility paid for itself in this event. We used every gallon of storage that thing had, and we were right on the edge. We shaved 300,000 gallons into the Walker tank. We had maybe 2 or 3 feet of freeboard in that before it was going to go over, and we had the Portola facility pretty much brim full, about 200,000 gallons plus of that. So when you think about, when you start talking about fines and gallons, installing that facility kept about 200,000 gallons of sewage from going somewhere, whether it was out of Montera, because we probably would not have pumped it down there just to have it overflow. But it would have come out of it, we would have been overflowing the Walker tank at that point.
So if we hadn't built that wet weather project, we would have been fined.
We could have seen a fine as high as $2 million at the going rate.
Okay.
So
The two places that it used to routinely overflow before the plant expansion were at Portola and the GSD manhole at the corner of Magellan and Barada. And I actually have a letter from Dixon stating that that was Sam's fault, even though it was coming out of GSD's manhole.
And one of the things that I've had some discussions with SRT as I've gotten more familiar with this project is apparently they designed it to be expandable in the future. And that is something on the very long-term capital plan we might want to consider, because I've never seen as much I&I come as fast anywhere in my life, and it was terrifying. And this storm that we saw is just about the maximum that we can take, so at least now we know. This is the Walker tank, and this was 2 days later. We'd had enough time between when the rain had abated to pump this down, fortunately, before we had the IPS at Valamar get a puncture in it, and so we were able to put more flow back into this tank, and I'll discuss that in a minute, so we could do a repair. If we had been full, we would have had an issue, and if this had happened during the rain, we would have had a huge issue. But I want to point out, I tried to get a laser pointer today, but I got some wrong tool. If you see the darker line in that tank, where the bell comes out of the wall, there's kind of a gray area. That's how full that was, and on top of Portola being brim full. That's pretty close to us, and it was filling up quite quickly. Okay, you see the bottom of the, okay, see down okay, look down at the bottom of that bell.
Down here.
Right up, no, you were right at the first time, up to the top. Okay, now if you look at the wall, you can see a difference in coloration. It's gray, grayer. And it kind of gets, well, I put that you can see it.
Picture if you will.
Yes, right there.
So
That was how high that was the day before.
So the pipe coming out would have been like half covered where it comes out.
Yeah, we were right up at the,
We were about 3 feet from overflowing the manhole.
yeah. So, you know, and the point I'm getting at is that we had everything running full bore. We'd used all the capacity we had, and that was still rising until the point when the rain abated. And so we just you know, I'm fairly comfortable saying this was almost a design event test of this, and it passed, and it's good to know.
Where are we with the bypass stations? Something in my head says we never put the rest of them in. We have some of them installed further, like within my district's area, I think they're installed, but not further north.
I think you may be right. Let me double check on that, because I don't want to speak to projects I'm not up to speed on.
That comes into play regarding the force main failure that's later on the agenda.
So in that, basically, well, over a period of 3 days, we lost 149, almost 150 hours of staff overtime. We responded to 3 overflows and numerous station alarms. We had staff constantly moving for that entire period. We had Calcon, that was the electrical support. We brought them out here, and he logged about 56 hours running from place to place while we replaced the VFD and did other work. And so, but his input and the ability for him to move from place to place really, it paid off. He saved a lot of the smaller stations, I think, from having some issues. And I wanted to, take a brief moment to say, I got a lot of kudos for the staff. There are multiple guys that I know were going 24 hours that day and then turned around a day later on Saturday, and we're putting in another big day when we had the force main issue. Now, next is a rundown of what happened the next day. That picture there is a picture of the section of the force main that we cut out of Valinor. That's an exterior picture. I couldn't get a decent picture, I think this was 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night when we got that out of the ground, of the interior that really showed the wear. But the wear patterns are similar to what we have out in the yard here from the slip lining project. Mm-hmm. Not as dramatic where you see a hole every 2 feet, but it's very thin, and it goes as far as I could see in both directions with a good light looking up that main. So
what are we looking at? Is that a 3-inch hole in the pipe?
That's a 3-inch long by 1/8 inch wide abrasion hole. That's the outside where it daylighted out. If you look inside, there's a groove in the bottom of that force main about this wide that runs, I would suspect, the length. And what I think is happening here is when there's certain changes in velocity, it lets some of that scouring debris start to settle. And where you start to see it settle out and grind away is where you get pattern, because there's odd patterns of more wear and then less in various places. And that's the only thing I can figure is it's the carrying velocity versus the weight of the material. And so as it starts to drop out, you get greater wear in spots. And so what we did is, rather than put a clamp around this piece of pipe, we sectioned out about 30 feet and dropped it in, because we had the time in the walker tank to do that, and I didn't want to get into a situation where this failure happened 6 inches from the place where we had just done a repair last year. And so figuring that if there's some kind of a grit damage that's based on the weight of the material, you want to get some length on that, or you might put on a clamp on and then have another foot and you're going to have another hole. So we took a little extra time to do that, but we had the ability. 11 a.m. December 13th, about 36 hours after this rain stopped, we got this report of a sewage bubbling up out the edge of pavement and going into a lady's garage.
And so that was this hole?
That was this hole. Unfortunately, we'd had the walker tank pumped out. We could shut down Montero without overflowing. The rain had quit, and we had staff that was rested enough, and we had a contractor, Andrini, that did the work available. But that brought up a lot of what-ifs. And one of the main what-ifs is if we had been full and we had to shut down to do this, we would have been spilling at Montero at full bore, 2 MGD, for however long it took, and in this case it took 12 hours to effect this repair. So we're very fortunate that 36 hours that this didn't come up, and when it did, we had, I think, 4 or 5 pump cycles, so the amount of sewage that was sent out into the environment was comparatively very small compared to what could have happened. This is a picture of the line once we got it daylighted. The already repaired part from the previous year is where the blue coupling is, and the green pipe that's still buried. The hole in that pipe that I photographed was about 6 inches ahead of that blue coupling. So what we decided to do was to dig that back for quite a ways so we could hopefully get to a piece of pipe with some better integrity, section it out and replace it with another piece of, I think that's C900, it's actually thick water pipe we use. Some of the lessons that we took away from this, a wet weather flow management project paid big dividends in this case, because there was no way that I think without it, we wouldn't have had a major issue. And it would have been just hydraulic overload. The Valamore IPS has a lot of damage in it that is really reminiscent of the previous damage patterns we've seen in other areas. And unfortunately, I feel fairly confident in saying that we have another severe pipe stress from trying to push all that flow through it in a short amount of time. We could have another failure, and it will be a matter of hoping that it doesn't happen at the peak of the flows when there's no place to put it. The lack of a redundant pump at Montero, and I'll touch on this now, is a serious issue. We had both the pumps there. There originally were 3, and the reason being is you always want to have the ability to run at your capacity with 2, and the ability to rotate in a third as a backup. With that one that was taken out years ago, we had 2. That room down there was like a sauna from the heat being generated from these pumps. And we were watching the tank come up. It was raising like a foot an hour.
Yeah.
And we had 3 feet to go before we were going to go out into the sea.
I didn't understand the part of the staff report explanation of why that third pump was removed.
I'm trying
Weird,
to understand it myself, but what I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it came out because there was a lot of repeated damage to that pump because of grit. And what it looks like is the pattern of flow when it comes into wet wells, dumping all the grit where that third pump is. Well, you can control grit by doing preventative maintenance routinely, by getting in and cleaning these things out. And what I think is, it's a confined space entry. It's a little bit hairy to get in there, but I don't think traditionally, and I think just the damage, the sand damage in the line, I don't think a lot of that was done historically over the years, and now you're kind of seeing some of these issues. And you know, I can see that in the short term, maybe it was, well, we don't want to keep replacing this pump that's getting destroyed by sand. That's not really, doesn't make operational sense to me, I'll be honest with you. And so what I'm telling the board is I can make the grit problem better by doing more maintenance, but we've got to have a pump in there.
Well, I thought that some sewer systems have sand traps and we
What-
don't.
We
Maybe
had a
not.
sand trap in the past, I believe, up there.
There was a grit receiving area in line before, I don't know how many years ago it was taken out. I think as it was getting closer to the edge, that was slowly falling off. And they relocated the pipe coming into the station, they pulled it closer to the east. And when they did that, they didn't put the grit chamber back in.
So you understand, I think when I've gone out to, you know, they moved a lot of the infrastructure away from the embankment because it was eroding off into the sea.
This is right behind the Montero
Right,
district.
yeah, right behind the Montero building itself. And at the time, they just went with a straight pipe. They didn't want to construct, for whatever reason, another grit trap, probably at the expense. And so without constructing that, well, that grit had to go someplace. The next natural place was the wet well at Montero. And when that happened, the pumps started getting damaged and the sand was getting pushed down the lines. It's a cascading thing. It takes years to get the damage, but it's what you see when those decisions get made. What I'm saying is we don't necessarily have to go to the expense of putting in another grit chamber. We can control this with proper maintenance. But that pump on the left, that's the old housing. The 2 pumps, or there are 2 high-capacity pumps are on the right. Either one of those had failed and we would have been doing 1,000 gallons a minute plus overflow at that point because we were missing one. And so one of the things I'd like to discuss is putting in a third pump, just equivalent to those 2, and if the price is right, maybe making it a grinder pump to run in lead so that the ragging issues go away.
Did you say to run in lead?
What's that?
Did you say to run in lead?
Well, in the lead position, and to run that as the primary pump most of the time, because 9 times out of 10, several years out, most of the time we'll never need 2 pumps going full bore for very long. So you have one of your pumps that you kind of rely on as primary, and my suggestion is if we're going to go to the expense, we go to a little bit extra expense, put in what they call a grinder pump, which takes things like rags and debris and just shreds it up and passes it through, right? Because what you have is we get rag accumulations in there that periodically plug up the impellers on these pumps, and so we are always going out there pulling the pump, pulling the rags out, putting it back in place. It's all part of this flushable white craze that's going on. What happens is those things end up in big balls in wastewater agencies.
We should do DNA testing and see who's collecting.
But, and many agencies, as they go through, are retrofitting out their pump stations with chopper or grinder pumps, because they're just trying to get compliance with people when the convenience level is so high. You know, of flushing things, you know, there's a difference between a baby wipe, a flushable wipe, a cleaning wipe. And the cleaning wipes are supposed to go in a waste basket, they don't break down. They end up getting entrained as long socks of debris.
Don't flush your windows.
Yeah, I harp on this like crazy. It's-
T-shirt, don't flush your windows.
when I was working up at Lake Tahoe, I watched within a period of months to a few years, pump station issues triple, quadruple, because these things started becoming very popular with the cleaning staff at the hotels along the lake shore. And it was clean it, flush it, clean it, flush it. And you could almost map out exactly where we were starting to have our issues. We're always downstream of these major hotels.
And by the way, I assume that includes these paper towels that they advertise as, you know, strong when wet. They probably have some in them that we don't like either.
Those get beat up pretty good. I mean, they're not as, but you've seen like the Lysol wipes that have an actual kind of a matrix to it to make them tough, to make them clean well. Well, those things just, they don't break down. They don't biodegrade, and they end up in, they may be flushable technically, but flushable as far as being harmless, they're not. And so what I was looking at is with the board's agreement, my proposal for kind of an accelerated CIP for this fiscal and the next fiscal year is going to be addressing these two issues here. Because this frankly worries me greatly. We know now that the wet weather flow management project in Portola works, but the lack of a redundant pump here and the condition of this pipe is very concerning to myself. And then I wanted to hit on some historic storm trivia. As I spoke earlier, I'd done a little bit of research to see, you know, how bad could it be, you know, with the understanding that you can't design something for like this a super quick. There are natural events that are going to be so bad nobody can deal with it, but I want to get an idea of the what ifs, recent history. And I was thinking of the Rolling Stones for some reason. The 1982-83 El Nino that came through here, to our neighbors to the south, got 25 inches of rain in a 36-hour period in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We got 5. So obviously, I mean, there are periods, but what I was looking at was the pattern of El Ninos. We had 82-83, 96-97. We're right in that same 15-year plus or minus pattern, and they were saying earlier that we're going to have another El Nino year. Now I'm not, it feels pretty dry for me, but whether it's this year or next, sooner or later, I think even with the climate changes we may be experiencing, we're going to get some of these peak events. And
I think the last El Nino was actually 97, 98.
I might have gotten the.
Yeah, it was 97.
Was 97
Was it 97, 98, or 96, 97? Okay.
Now, we did have a major storm in 95, 96 that was not an El Nino, but it was still a huge,
sure.
huge storm.
And you know, and it may be that things like the predictability of El Nino goes away, but that doesn't mean that you can't roll snake eyes with a major storm too. But I got curious about the Desert Research Institute up in northern Nevada collects all this data, and they have a tremendous website for the entire West as far as precipitation rates going back in history, peak winds, all that. So if you're ever curious, it's a neat resource. And that I wanted to give you all a kind of an overflow. Sorry.
Rob, could you go back to the slides? I think you missed one to talk about. With the slide was moving along while you were talking. If you could.
Scroll through here.
Love it.
Somebody's got to talk to the national mothership about their choice of fonts.
It's not too much trouble. It shouldn't be.
Old font from 1987.
Let's get on that.
Another weather trivia is down in Australia, they had those massive heat things where it was over like 125 and something.
Yeah.
So they had to add another color. They had to add purple
125.
in
Yeah.
the deserts.
Does it even get that hot in Death Valley?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, can I get up to 120?
Could.
Was it this,
Which one was
was it this or
Yeah,
was
yeah,
it?
they were right there.
Well, one of the things that, if I didn't touch on this, I didn't mean to pass it by, I might have double tapped the thing, is as I was going through this, the wet weather flow management project paid big dividends. It was a happy occurrence for me to find out that that was designed with some expandability in it. So at least we have the flexibility in the future to make that space bigger, because
Yeah, the intent was we could go to close to 3 times the current size.
and that might be something on the more the longer term horizon. That
It was,
would be
it was
worthwhile.
very explicitly discussed here that we would see what our experience over a few years was and then decide, you know, do we need to expand it?
We've seen a peak.
We just
in
had
this
good
event.
experience.
This is it.
How the weeds looking on top of that thing?
Probably very green.
They're not. Sorry. They're not green.
I guess the point 5
Yes,
that I was
stop.
looking at is one of the things I'd like to touch on, and is creating, and I'm gonna start working on this direction, is creating maybe a more robust staffing model. And I hate, there's a fine line between having a very lean staff and being so lean that you're overstretched between emergency responses. And so we're going to try and pick apart a model and see, and also looking at if we're going to add a couple of staff to get a little bit better ability to handle multiple incidents happening in multiple areas at the same time, that we need some certain skill sets. Electrician being one, we paid a good amount of money to a contractor because we don't have that skill internally. We can develop that or hire somebody. And maybe somebody that specializes in welding and field fabrication. Those two areas, your electrical motor specialist and somebody that can fabricate things on the fly without having to have them designed or send it off to a third-party welder, are 2 areas that if we come to the decision to increase our staff, I would like to create a more diverse pool of talent to get us away from the reliance on contractors. We got lucky with Calcon; they've been very responsive to us. But that individual lived here night and day for a couple of days while we dealt with this.
Were the collection system guys involved in this event?
Everybody was. I was out on this. I was at Portola with my knees knocking till 4 a.m. Well, we had a VFD fail there, and this is another issue. Unfortunately, we could run it in. We could control it manually.
Controller manually.
So when you say VFD fail, that's the controller.
That's the motor controller. And the thing that makes it an issue at Portola is when they designed the VFDs in the electrical circuit, if that thing smoked, if it ever burned up, there's no way to bypass, to run the electrical circuit directly. It's called running your pumps across the line. And so I was sitting there hoping that it wouldn't, it was getting overheating and it was needing to be manually reset. So I stayed down there so the guys could go deal with their issues. And the whole time I'm thinking, if this thing catches fire and melts down, there's no way that I can go over here and flick a breaker and turn those pumps on across the line. Am I misstating this?
No, you're absolutely correct.
And
If that VFD went out, we were done.
in the grand scheme of things, the quotes, one of the issues is the cabinet space. To do the across the line bypass, it's about a $30,000 expense, but people have not really wanted to go down that road of sinking money into that. That those decisions can really bite you in the rear. And so we've done kind of a rundown of lessons learned and things like that, and a lot of the guys have been living with these kind of issues for a long time. And one of my challenges to them and to myself is to start enumerating and bundling all these things. The direction I give my staff is start bundling all these items so we can start getting manageable project concepts, so we can build something where I can give a presentation, I can get authorization, and we can knock a bunch of these worries off our list and then move on to the next thing over the next couple of years.
The situation with the VFDs is somewhat
It's concerning.
annoying because the VFDs there are relatively new compared to much of the SAM system.
It's not about the VFDs.
I mean, they weren't designed properly and, 30 years newer than the whole rest of it.
If there was a design issue, it was a drop in the ball in a basic concept. And you can put a high-tech piece of equipment to manage your pumps in, but whatever you put in that's electronic and subject to failure, you should be able to bypass with 1890s technology, where you can flip a switch and make a circuit. There's a real push in the industry to go with efficiency, and I support all that. But when I ran a sewer agency up in Lake Tahoe, I still had floats tied to old-fashioned landlines as the ultimate backup, because if everything else failed, I didn't want to be relying on a radio that couldn't commute, couldn't talk out. I wanted to have that backup, and it's across-the-line bypasses in your pump stations are critical. You always need to be able to run those machines in stupid mode. And there's a lot of faith that goes into the technology, but it can let you down, and sometimes over even just a glitch in the programming. It could be one item and one piece of ladder logic in that machine goes haywire for whatever reason, and you're done in an event like this.
Yeah, I make my living on tech, and I don't trust tech.
Well,
So this is a prelude to item F?
item F, and that was where I wanted to. There's a, yes. This was, I wanted to paint
Set
a
the
picture
stage.
for the board of some of the different things that concern me.
So are there any other questions on E? We just move straight into F then.
Please.
It's on page 2 of the agenda.
I just have to click on the 5.
Some of the pictures in my presentation are attached to the next report.
Was the,
Yep.
you know, when we had the IPS failure at Coronado, we didn't have any Band-Aids the right size. Has that been remedied?
We've got clamps in stock for.
We didn't at that time, they had to use 2 smaller ones and hook them together.
Yeah, we have a whole variety of clamps in one of our buildings now. And we also have 14-inch pipe, which is the piping that's out at the Portola station.
One of those is cracked. What happened to that?
The guys thought, the Valleymar line is a 12-inch. They thought that the piping at Portola was 12-inch, so they went and got it. They realized it wasn't. They brought it back when they dropped it off. Just one end of it. 90% of it is still usable.
As kind of a general comment, first of all, have we been able to give this information to like the review? To kind of, not just to brag, but this was a serious event, and you know, Sam performed very well.
It's a good story.
Yeah, it's a good story.
I appreciate that, but it's one of these things too where it's I don't know, sometimes I prefer to kind of fly under the radar because people grab some of this information and they can run off and they'll say, well, everything Sam owns is going to heck in a handbasket or whatever. And so I like being able to tell the story of how we perform and some of the things like the performance of the wet weather flow management project.
Well, I think
That would be good, that's good to highlight, and that is something I could tailor maybe important.
Well, possibly just because the other aspect of this is this whole RAG situation which is developing. To me, I mean, besides like our own individual newsletters, to me that would be a good article for the community, is to describe very clearly what the 3 different kinds are. To say,
Show photos.
you know, you will be spending millions of dollars if you keep doing this, so stop.
I'd be more than happy to write an article and submit it to them and see whether, you know, let
I'm sure
them
we can
decide
get
what
that
they
into
want
the
to
We
do.
can all get t-shirts, take a team photo and put it in all of them.
No more RAG.
Get off the rag.
But I really think that you should do a press release on how valuable the 2 wet weather overflow projects.
I'd be more than happy to do that. I just generally, before I do outreach, I like to talk to my board about things, because if somebody comes up and says,
9:38, I gotta.
why did you say that?
So is there anybody here who objects to Rob doing a press release on how valuable the 2 wet weather facilities are?
I think it's a great idea.
If you could highlight a photo of the cookies, because obviously they were worth every
You know,
penny at this point.
I think if you've got some $6 cookies, if that helped be part of the success.
If that's what it takes
If
to
it
get
takes
this
$6
kind of
cookies,
protection
you
for the
know.
coast side.
Director Kowalczyk, I'll do my own PR.
Yeah. Alright, well, so we're clear, there's no cookie budget.
I just had to, somebody was gonna broach it, I just had to put it out.
Will you eat them?
You know, I didn't have one, I'm gonna go, I'm like anti-$6 cookies.
Okay, we're gonna move on to F, so we can,
Yeah, let's move this along.
it's been running along here, folks.
You see what he does with cookies after.
Rob, we move on to F.
Rick, can we go to our hurry-up offense?
Yeah.
Sure. Given what I've just explained, and I've already gone through a lot of my concerns with this issue, one of the things that I had a discussion with SRT related to their air project. And the suggestion was brought forward that in order to expedite this, why don't we take the bid documents that they've already in process and roll the replacement of this force main into that and create a bigger project that only has to go with one set of bids and go through, and then to bundle this together. And we'll end up splitting fiscal years. We've got 400,000, 300,000 this fiscal to get this work beginning. It's not going to be enough to cover the full reach of Valamar. It was originally proposed in some of the CIP work that was done before I got here to be broken into separate fiscal years. And I think there's a lot to be said, given the condition of this, to fund it across 2 fiscal years but bid it out as one project.
So if we were to do that, kind of retool the existing,
Correct.
Who reviews that before that goes out to bid? Do you and council both review the bid documents?
Yeah, we would take a look and make sure that all works out. But the concept is to to bid this out as a project, so when we're done, we walk away and we know we've got a secure piece of infrastructure. I would feel terrible if we replaced 1,225 feet of it and left 1,225 feet until the next rainy season and had a failure there. That was a big one.
So the things that you're gonna combine are still things that a single contractor would bid on, and that contractor would expect to do it all.
Correct.
So this would combine mobilization.
Yes, it takes 2 mobilizations over 2 years, combines them into one. We could probably get this done in one construction season, and if we get moving on it fairly quickly, we can probably get this done before the next rainy season next year. And so that was one of the reasons why I'm asking authorization to go with SRT's proposal. Is if I have to go back out and run down another engineering company and get them up to speed, there's there's delays in there. I know that doing a go-to on this it's not ideal. In an ideal world, had this not happened, I was going to wait for the engineering and construction contract manager person to come in and start being able to manage these. That will cost me 2 months right now, and that 2 months may end up pushing something that could be buttoned up in September into the middle of winter. And we may not be able to do it, or we might end up with this not being able to happen in that kind of time frame. And so there's a certain amount of urgency with this to me. But I think.
So to be clear, you're targeting construction in calendar 2015 before the rain.
Yes, that is the goal with this. But I think I need to move on this now, or I wouldn't be putting this out here when I'm 6 weeks or 8 weeks away from having a new body with engineering and contract management expertise here. But it's 2 months.
So you've got existing big documents that could be retooled in pretty short order.
Correct.
If someone were, say you did a really quick hire and you got them here in 2 months, they still have some ramp before they can even start to work on this.
There's a period of weeks to a couple of months while somebody gets their feet on the ground, makes the contacts, gets the understanding of the business practices, adapts to an organization.
So you're looking at 3 months out, minimum. And that's without familiarity with the project itself.
Correct. And that's if we decide we want to go out and we want to get multiple bidders on the engineering by itself to even get going. That's a process where we've got to come up with a bid spec, send it out to engineering companies for the bidding and construction management services, get those bids back. Then we turn them loose on finding a contractor, and we go out and do the same thing where we put a project with the design out to bid. So you see what it is you're ending up repeating the situation multiple times, which is perfectly acceptable when you're doing a big project and there's no sense of urgency, there's no multi-million-dollar fines hanging over your heads. But this issue with this particular case, I would like the ability to start moving on it sooner.
The construction would go out to bid, it's just the engineering.
Yes, everything goes, yes.
Have we, the regulators talked to us about this stretch?
As far as the,
I'm just wondering if they brought it up, because I've been wondering for a couple of years whether or not they were going to.
to my knowledge at this point, no, but I'll have to get back to you on that.
This has been a point of repeated failure.
Yes,
Mhm.
as recently as last year.
And we're probably.
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The engineering firm came to you with an idea, and although on the surface it all seems very plausible and logical, the net result of that idea is they have a no bid contract for $100,000. I think we're always going to feel a sense of urgency with SAM. I can't think of any project that came in front of us where there wasn't where we didn't say, oh, this is important, or this is there's a sense of urgency for this, whether it's monitoring something or replacing or whatever. So I'm not comfortable handing a $100,000 project to a firm without either a bid or a peer review of their work. That's where I'm at.
That's why I'm presenting, that's why I put this together, was to present the concept, but I will, obviously.
I'd like to see us get a great project, sounds right, right? And it's big, it's how many thousands of feet of pipe, right? 2,300 feet of pipe, right? So it's a big deal. So let's, I think we should treat it appropriately, like we would treat any big deal project, and have it have a competitive bid.
Just two thoughts. Could you tell us about if we did, how fast can we run, let's say, just a standard bid process? About how long it would take to just do this, assuming there were no emergencies and.
You're talking about for the engineer?
Yes, for the engineering.
I'm gonna have to run that myself. It's gonna take me some time, I'll be honest with you, because we're busy trying to develop the budget for this coming year, and there's a lot of other things I have on the plate. Not that it's not possible, but putting a time frame on it, I can't. It's gonna take me a couple of weeks to get everything together, to get something cogent out, to get, because whatever I let out for a proposal would have to go out, and they're gonna have to have adequate time to digest it.
Since this is a kind of like updating an existing one, like has happened before, would you expect other agencies it would cost them more because they're coming up to speed? I mean, we can't guess what their bids are going to be, but if they're coming in more or less familiar,
I would.
or would you expect other people could bid the same? And the big problem is more of the timing and the emergency level.
They're, based on what I think the cost of the overall project would be, I don't think the estimate on the engineering and design and construction management is anywhere outside of the norm on this, but that's just past experience. As far as, I can't speak to how people are gonna bid or set their fees. There may be an opportunity to save some money there. The big thing is gonna be the cost and time.
So this is actually fairly standard practice for Montero on both the water and the sewer side. We have designated engineers, and this is how we normally do business. I'm wondering though, with the concern you raised, we have three agencies, we have three agency managers and their associated staff who could take a look at what we're getting out of something like this and decide if that's good enough. So, I mean, you said peer review. We actually have, amongst the three of us, we have three sets of people who could
Yeah,
take a
I
look.
think that strikes me as a reasonable approach.
I know that, for example, Clemens could take a look at this and say, this is well within the
Or
ordinary
think
scope
that,
or
or
not.
maybe subbing that out to the engineering staff, three-member agencies, and saying, take a look at this.
When you say this, you're referring to essentially the proposal from SRT for services?
For the construction, the bidding
I'm interested
construction.
in, let's get some eyes on it, but I'm also interested in not spending a lot of extra money just to try to save money on this. And I'm also interested in having shorter turnaround time. And I preface all this with this is common practice for the agencies that do utilities, is to have, you know, designated engineers who do this work and send it to them. And from time to time, you do a review to see if what you're getting is, you know, commensurate with what you might get from others.
Well, typically in the past, I've gone out and done requests for proposals for engineering companies, and we sign them to a multi-year contract. And then we build the budgets around those individuals for that period, and then after, say, 3 to 5 years, we go out to bid again on those services.
And so how long has SRT been providing them?
They've been they've done support work here for Salmon, but they've been one of among many. We've used other engineers apparently in the past, but for
Not
many
in
years.
5 years.
Well, it used to be all Corollo all the time. Remember
Oh,
Corolla?
yes, thank you for providing the context,
Right.
yes.
And we've had very direct experience with the difference in the level of service, the degree of creativity, and the vast difference in cost.
What weather project SRT saved us a couple $1 million.
Oh.
And the wet weather project was one that was really SRT working very creatively with staff. We came up with a project that was approved by the board, I think in May, and groundbreaking in October. Came in under budget, under schedule.
Okay, well, that's good information.
Sequent neg deck, the whole bit. I mean, it was.
One of the things with SRT that is, not that a lot of engineering companies aren't familiar with dealing with the coast side permitting issues, is they seem to be very adept at navigating through something like this and trying to get this permitted for a project of this size.
Yeah, on page 2,
Excellent.
on the second page of your document, you have staff recommends, just above the recommended action, it says, further staff requests authorization to bundle this project into the engineering and bid document package. By bundling this, SAM can economize on document preparation, bidding, permitting, and mobilization, demobilization costs. So it sounds like they have this, SRT has this set to go, you're just gonna add these things to that package.
They're already
They've already got the permitting.
some steps ahead of where we would be with everybody else.
Well, that makes sense.
As far as permitting, if this is maintenance, it seems to me that the permit requirements are slim to none. And the $500 million gallon facility in Montero was done on a CDX, but I thought.
Let's focus here directly
Yeah,
on this
can't-
issue, because.
So I have one more question.
Sure.
But so we were talking previously about doing hydraulic analysis to understand what the actual flows are. Probably right at the start of your tenure.
Mhm.
Have we done that work yet?
No,
Okay. Should we do that work before we put in 2,300 feet of pipe?
It's the only stretch of pipe from one pump station to the next. This is IDS. Are you concerned about wanting to size it up, or, because what we've got there, I mean, there it's gonna be a matter of historical flows, which staff knows pretty well, and the ability to pump it.
right now,
Well,
we're still
we're
facing kind of a
modeling.
bottleneck too, is we hit that balance point where even if we had the capacity to push more out of Montero, we're still limited by what we can take at Portola. And so if we're gonna, if we upsize that, we're just moving a problem, we wouldn't be able to run it at its
So we've got-
capacity until
We've got two major,
we increase the size and the ability of intermediate handling.
we've had hydraulic studies done previously, and we've had one major and then a follow-on major revision after the water tank was put into service. And now that we've got the burn and strip facility, we should take that into account again. But the conclusion in all of that was what we needed was more retention. The sizing of the lines was that ever an issue in those reports? I don't recall. I would encourage staff to refresh on that. And Rob, if you haven't read the second revision of that, it was some really good work. Corolla did the work. we grilled them hard at the time, they brought in somebody to do it, some very nice work. It needs updating, but we do have a foundation.
Yeah, as far as that too, that to me is one of these ones that would be less of an emergency. We can just do a normal bid process on the update. We can just send that out for normal bids and things like that because that's not
I
critical.
hope we have the hydraulic model in-house.
And have that
At
updated,
the
but-
time, we requested that we do wind up with all that.
Since
So-
everybody's kind of talking, my thought is we just escaped by the skin of our teeth. And everybody was pretty terrified by that, and I'd rather not go through that again. I'd rather to me, speed is more important than saving some money
We
here
need to
right
make
now.
sure the construction can be completed before the next.
Yes, so those are my thoughts. My thoughts would be to move forward with the recommendations. Anybody else want to contribute before we vote?
Just a final thought is that I'm not comfortable that we seem to regularly hand large projects to SRT. And this is
The goal really is to get away from that.
We don't have-
Wall check. I'm just
we
trying
need to
to
have
move down the path
options.
the fastest
And
path.
so I understand we need to move for speed, but I'm also feel cornered because we're not presented with options. We don't have an engineering option, and that's unfortunate. We need to do that. We need to be able to have multiple sources for insights and advice, not just always the same one.
I agree, no one feels
I agree.
more cornered than I do in the situation.
If you know that CCWD used Jim Tier from 1961 until somewhere approximately.
I don't know and actually don't care.
Yeah, and I agree with Rick on both points, so. Okay, all those in favor, oh, we
Well,
need
I
an
move
actual
that we
motion. on
authorize
this
the
one.
manager to negotiate an engineering services agreement for engineering work in support of emergency replacement of the IPS between Montero and Palomar pump stations and reinstallation of the third pump at Montero pump station with SRT consultants in an amount not to exceed $99,520.
Second.
So, any more discussion? Thoughts?
I
Any
think we've had
thoughts?
enough discussion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
On principle, I oppose.
Okay.
And I'm also happy to see the project go forward.
So that
Thank
was,
you.
is that 6 to 2?
62. I know this has been running late for everybody with these,
I agree.
a
That's
lot of big
good.
critical
That's
issues
good.
here, and I'm glad to
Let's move it along.
move it along. So, let's move to the general manager's report.
In interest of time, is there any, rather than run down a laundry list of a lot of this, do you have any questions with the details within my report?
I did want to request, it's come up a few times, and I'd like to see if we can formalize it and get some consensus on this, but on the flow report,
Yes.
we have talked a few times about having 5-year graphical history, and in addition to what we presently have, what I'm imagining is 3 separate graphs, each one showing 5 line graphs overlaid of the current and previous 4 years.
For a member agency.
So each member agency will get a page, and then on that also to have rainfall from a local to that agency rain gauge if we have it. So there'd be a total of 6 lines on that graph, all overlaid. And I'm happy to take a data set and
If you have an example of, just as the format that you're looking at.
If you could get me 5 years of flow report data, and along with rainfall from as many gauges as you can. I mean, I can get it from Montero, because we've got the history going way back. But try to assemble something, show you what I'm imagining.
Okay, that'd help.
You could just mark that out, Scott.
I just mostly want Leonard to not have to bring it up again. But I'd be happy to work with you on a presentation that might help us see, because as Rick pointed out earlier, and as Renata has had to point out previously, we get these things and then we're looking at the recent data, and it's really, it looks weird, but to get us into context, if we have 5 years, then that's enough context where you can kind of see the climates. Is this, is something drifting? We've had meters go weird on us. And we wanna catch the next one, because something will fail. We wanna catch the next one earlier rather than the year and a half in that it took us on the last one.
Are there any other comments or questions on the manager's report?
It's a big deal.
Hearing none, we'll accept that and thank you, and move to the attorney's report.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we have an action item here for you to consider, and that is we received a document which in the nature of a claim against both the city of Half Moon Bay as well as SAM. And as I understand, and it's in your packet here, as I understand the facts, there's a alleyway somewhere in Half Moon Bay in which there is a sewer line. And we don't own the alleyway at SAM, not the Half Moon. We don't own the alleyway and we don't own the sewer line. We're merely in there under our maintenance contract with Half Moon Bay to maintain the sewer line.
So it's a collection system line, not part of the IPS?
That is correct. And this claim is for a request that the trees in that, a certain tree or trees in that alleyway be addressed by somebody other than the property owner. So they filed a claim against the city, and they have filed the same claim against the SAM. And like I said, I'm not sure what the ownership of it is. All I know is we don't own it, and we don't own the pipe. And all we're in there is a maintenance agreement through the city to maintain the collection system. And for that reason, I think the action would be to reject the claim and refer it to our insurance.
Refer it to?
Insurance company to handle it. We've already had discussions with the insurance company, and Jeanette's been very good at communicating with the insurance company, and they have already received the claim.
So does that mean the insurance company would write a long letter that spells NO?
It's a statutory notice of rejection of claim.
Okay.
Jeanette's already been in communication with them to get the form, which we will send out, or they will send out.
Because the way I read your staff report, we have no responsibility there at all.
Let's further, subject to the development of further facts, but I didn't see anything in there that was related to us.
I would move for staff.
Second.
I would like to see this done because the original nastygram letter had my name on it too.
Yeah, why in the world does it have Rick's name on it? That
Because
makes no
he's the
sense.
secretary. He was
Although
the secretary.
the secretary and I received correspondence. Any further comments?
The action would be, I keep looking over here. The action would be to a motion to reject the claim and to direct the filing of or transmittal of a notice of rejection.
So moved.
And I already seconded it.
Second, no. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. And
We should get the form.
director's reports. We're running late. For those interested, I was at the LAFCO meeting, and LAFCO decided to move forward with the MSR for the Harbor District. For all those interested with all of those.
Even though they got a whole bunch of letters from
Even though
former
they did.
critics saying, wait.
Any further director's reports on meetings? Let's create any further public comment. I see none, so let's be adjourned.
Thank you.
Your first
Thank you.
Our first quick meeting.